we got to have you lose your job in order for you to find your true calling.
No,
That's what
no,
Stein gets taught. That's anything it's taught you. You got to go through the bad parts before you get to the good parts.
no.
Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel, where a podcast about video games, anime, entertainment, life, a little bit of everything in between. I'm your host, as always, Joe, and with me for this anime special focused episode, our resident hack, Nick. Nick, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. I think I know what you're getting at there, and I'm both offended and uh, what's the opposite of offended? Appreciative of that, I
Honored.
guess. Honored, yeah. Yeah, thesaurus. Yeah, yeah. I have gotten to that. I think the purpose of that joke will be made apparent later on. How are you, Joe?
Doing all right. Yeah, so we have been talking about this one for a while, and it was just been on the back burner as a special that we can do. It's a series that you have not seen in its entirety yet, and that is Steins Gate. So that's what we're talking about here today. Uh, it's one of those that you knew that you had to watch, and because it's kind of a bigger one,
Hmm.
we were waiting for a specific time to make it so, and yeah, so now we're going to slowly rip off this band-aid.
Very,
It's a
very
two-parter.
slowly. Just the Ren and Stimpy. Imagine like all the hair, just like some being left, but a lot being torn off as you like rip the band-aid back slowly, slowly. Yeah. So I had actually tried to watch Steins Gate probably about a year ago, and I made it through the first, I think, three-ish episodes, maybe into the fourth. And I didn't really didn't really love it. It was I was watching the subbed version, and it was hard to follow, and it didn't make a ton of sense, and there was a lot of other stuff to watch, and it was just like I was trying to watch it and I'd be like tired and I'd be like, I have no idea like what is really going on here. I'm just gonna watch something else, and then I just never came back to it. So whenever we decided to do this, I was kind of glad because like, okay, I know that I need to watch this. I've always heard for years and years that Steins Gate is like, man, you gotta watch Steins Gate, and I've managed to avoid spoilers up until this point, amazingly. Or if I did see a spoiler, it just like went, over my head, and it never bothered me. Um, but yeah, so I have watched up to a certain point, and so talk about what point we are going to be talking to today, Joe,
All
and
right.
why.
So the as when I first brought this, like you had brought up you have a bunch of anime that are on a list. Like this is my must watch list. If not, then your poser if you don't list, as it were.
Mm.
And so this was up there. You mentioned it. And I'm like, yeah, I warned you beforehand. And it's like it's one of those things that it's a big commitment. It's like 23, 24 episodes.
24, yeah.
Uh 24. And then it's just like, hey, it doesn't really pop off until halfway through. And that's a commitment. I
Yeah.
mean, it's good. It has bits that are interesting, but there's a certain fulcrum point when then it pivots, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, this roller coaster ride is on now. Let's go." And that once again, it's just like playing a video game. If you're like, "No, no, no, dog, you got to get into like 6 hours before you can really get to enjoy the game." I'm like, that's asking way. They better be worth it, and it is. I've recommended this to friends in the past, and it's. I'm hoping that you'll have the same experience as they do. But what we have here is episodes 1 through 11, the safety episodes. They're good. They build up tension, build up lots of questions, lots of no idea what's going on, and unknown how much is going to pay off or if things are going to loop back. This is maybe my third or fourth time going through this series, but the last time I went through it was maybe 9 years ago. So it's been a while. But even so, I still remember a lot. And I think this is the first time watching it that I've really started picking up on a lot of other things, but maybe because I'm watching it as a, oh, we need to discuss this
Mm.
in the future.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that sad part is I can't even discuss it now because I have to wait for you to finish it before I can loop back. And then I'm like, dang it, Nick. Okay, I think you need to finish watching this. And when you're done, if you are satisfied with it, um, don't like and subscribe, but just rewatch it all over again. Uh, and then or at least the first bit so you can see how it ties back in or how things go, because as a good time travel story, if they do bring things, or a good story in general, when they pull things from before and they are alluding to things that are gonna happen in the future, like premonitions or something like that, it's always really neat to see how that's if it's done well. Um, and I remember Red versus Blue does this in a certain way, where it was phenomenally done with this time travel bit, where at some point you're like, how much of it did they have planned beforehand, and how much did they make it work post? Because I feel like that's way too much to have pre-planned, and I just don't believe that they had it pre-planned. I just believe they were able to bring it back. But with a series like this was originally um like a visual novel, and it was part of like the scientific adventure series of like sci-fi visual novels. Robotic Note was the next one in line, and then Chaos Head was like the third. All of them standalone, completely different, but kind of different focuses on sci-fi. And I think this one just really stood out as truly unique, especially for the time. This came out in what, 2010, 2011?
Yeah, it's set in
Um,
2010, but it actually, but whenever you look at all the copyright, it's 2011.
okay. And I think that, like, so we're just going to be talking about this episodes 1 through 11 for now. And
Right.
then we're going to do the remaining, and we're going to probably release this as a couple, either one giant episode or a couple small episodes. But this is to help, because pretty soon you'll be coming to visit the Windy City here, and for your first foray into Anime Central. And
Hmm.
uh, yeah, we'll see. I'm kind of curious to see how you'll handle it. I wanted you to cosplay so much, but you were like, "Nah, I need like a whole year and a half to plan my drip beforehand." And I'm like, "Really?" Like, yeah, I'm like, well, okay, man. I guess if you need to be fitted for your 2B outfit, I suppose. Um, that stuff just don't come mail order.
I don't know which
Uh,
is worse, being 2B or 9S. like like there's different things that I would be saying with each of those outfits, and neither of them are. Yeah, maybe I could go as Pascal, or um, I feel like I wouldn't be too bad of a Luffy, even though I just really don't give a give a hoot about One Piece. Sorry, but there's I don't know. There's not very many anime characters that are specifically my complexion, so it's a little bit pickings a little bit slim, and you got to get a little bit creative. But yeah, yeah, it's not something that's in the stars for me. The old cosplay.
yeah, it's one of those things that like I'm game if you are, and therefore I leave the ball in your court.
I
Though
don't want
if
to.
you were
I don't want to travel all the way to Chicago with like a cosplay outfit and try to do that while I'm like trying to go to this in another city and also I just don't really want. I just want to be a normal human being, or just blend into the background and watch the non-normies do their thing. That's I just don't want to. I don't want to engage. I don't want to engage with that right
so
now.
what we do need to do is then have a Patreon here to get Nick to engage.
It's
All
going to
right,
be
Roger that.
very, very, very expensive.
Like
And it
two
will
dollars
be
and 50 cents. Just
it will be it would be very, very expensive. and we'd have to hit your Patreon tier for that first. So, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, let's just get in on this. So because I've seen this before, the I'm gonna let you go ahead and do the chapter synopsis and kind of you're gonna be doing I have to be careful what I say because you still have the second half of this to go through.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I'm gonna get just want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, what you think is gonna happen. It's like who you like, who you don't like. The kind of just get the vibes from it. So, all right, why don't you just take it away from episode one?
Okay. All right. Episode one, Turning Point. Um, In the summer of 2010, self proclaimed mad scientist Rintaro Okabe and his cheerful childhood friend Mayuri Shina travel to the Akihabara Radio Kaikon building to attend a seminar on time travel by Dr. Nakabachi. There, Okabe has a brief, puzzling encounter with a young woman named Kurisu Makise, who claims to have spoken with him before, despite Okabe having no memory of it. After the conference, Okabe stumbles upon a shocking scene in a stairwell and sends an impulsive text message to his hacker friend Daru. He is then overcome by a strange sensation, and when he snaps out of it, the streets around him are inexplicably empty, and a peculiar object has crashed into the top of the Radio Kaikon building, as if reality itself has shifted around him. Okay, so that's a very brief synopsis of episode one. There is a lot of things that kind of go on in episode one that we could kind of talk about, and we will a little bit. Um, First of all, I wanted to go through I've got some notes here. Something that I wanted to list here is that so I've been watching the dub because it's a little bit easier to follow with how things go in this show, but I've also, out of necessity, had to turn the subs on as well, which may surprise you, are not the same. The dub is like its own thing, and they say different things. Sometimes it's the same message a lot of the time, but they say different things compared to the
It's the
sub.
translation from the Japanese opposed to a closed caption of the English is what it is.
Right, right. So it's kind of like that, but in the dub you can't really. I don't think this ever really happens, but in the sub, for some reason, Mayuri often refers to herself in the third person. So I don't know if that is really significant to very much, or if it's just some sort of accident. But I did notice that. There's a couple other things here. One is that Ocarine is the main character's nickname, and it's seemingly a mixture between his first name, the first syllables of his first name and his last name, and he doesn't seem to like being called by this anymore, because Mayuri's childhood friend often refers to him that way, and he's like, I don't really like to be called that, or my name is Hoenn. So it's sort of that's something that I kind of picked up on as well. Something that I noticed on the rewatch after watching through all 11 episodes, I skimmed back through and watched pieces of some episodes, especially the first one, to see how much I could pick up on. And there's a name, John Titor, is mentioned quite a bit early on, and then maybe a little bit here and there throughout each episode. And he is mentioned in the very first episode here, where Ocarine accuses Dr. Nakabachi of stealing his work. And I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, I wonder. And if for some reason it only occurred to me at this point, I was like, I wonder if John Titor is not John Titor's real name. And I was like, I wonder if John Titor is somebody that we know, because as we learn in some later episodes, I think in like episode 2, John Titor is a self-proclaimed time traveler. All right. So then some other stuff here.
Yeah, so they do mention John Teeter quite a bit in the series.
Teeter.
Yeah, and they end up having him, yeah, talking about from the theories, and they bring him up in the handful of episodes. He's a constant contact. He's he's kind of like the pushing point of time travel for um, Hyoin Kyoma, the or Okurin. And the funny part is they don't explain it, but Okarin's supposed to be like 18. He looks like
Yeah,
he's like 28.
yeah, because
But he's
him and Mayuri are supposed to be childhood friends, and but he looks at least like late 20s, maybe early 30s, and Mayuri looks very much more childish, I would say, or just like a very young adult, and acts like it, and so they act very differently, but yet they're basically the same age.
yeah, she's 16. She's in high
Okay,
school.
okay,
At what like episode 9 or 10, they have her in her sailor
they
fuku.
do. Yeah,
And then and then of course what's his face? Daru ends up saying like talks about her cosplaying, and they're like no, this she's like I just didn't have time to change. This is my and he makes reference to being a like something about the realism or something of it, being his pervy self.
yeah. So we can go into Daru a little bit. So Daru is introduced in this episode. He is as that one Spider-Man movie put it, the guy in chair, more or less. He is their hacker. And there's a joke in the sub where they keep calling him Haker, Haker, and I don't really. I understand that they're trying to. There's some kind of joke they're trying to make there, but it's not really translating to me. In the dub, it's a different way that they kind of jab at him, but basically he is like their computer guy that one of their computer guys, or he's like their computer guy that like unpacks a lot of technology stuff.
So I'm not sure if it's just a Japanese way because Japanese don't have a CK in their like the language. So I think it's just a because they call him super hacker, and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering just because the way it would be in Japanese would be, Haker, hacker,
But
hacker,
like
so
everything else is like translated properly, and this is specifically different. So and they also react to it in the sub. It's neither here nor there. It's just something that if I can do some more research on, I will to see what what's really going on there. Um, just a couple other little notes here that I had is that on kind of on the rewatch is that Ocarine suspects Kurisu, the redheaded girl, um, from the first moment that he sees her, but then he kind of forgets because they sort of move on from that. Um, and that comes up later, right around episode 10 or 11. It's kind of like, well, is she really who we think she is? But we'll get to that later in this episode. And then another thing is that uh, well, I don't want to go into this part because it's a little bit too theoretical right now, and it touches on some stuff that's going to come up later. So yeah, so but the characters that are introduced in this episode basically are Ocarine, Mayuri, Kurisu, and Daru, and there'll be some more in the next episode, but I think that's pretty much all that I had for this one.
yeah, I'm trying to remember if I don't know if they introduced anyone else in this first episode, but it does do a lot, and it's one of those things that it's most definitely episode one is most definitely worth a second watch, especially knowing that when you finish the series and how things kind of go back and forth. It's I'm not sure if everything is tied up correctly,
Mhm.
um, because I've never went that deep into it, but I do know that they do a lot of decent movement and jumping around. So, yeah, there's a lot of things I could point out, but at this point, uh, it really wouldn't help as far as it's just. will it be a loose end? Will it not? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
how much of it will you remember? Chances are, by the time something comes up, it'll probably be one of those moments where like, wait, was that mentioned before? Like, or was that there? I'll have to, then you'll have to go back and check yourself at that time.
yeah, this first episode is very hard to watch to me because it is doing a lot of stuff that is not particularly connected and doesn't really seem to make sense on the first watch. So it is difficult that way. It is interesting because of those things that it's doing that make it more confusing, and also like having seen some other things in this sort of sciencey vein. I was a little bit I it's like I don't really understand what I'm watching, but I know that I'm not really supposed to, and that they're putting in a lot of markers here to say we were trying to tell you the whole time, and this is how we're going to do it. So it's just something that I've tried to pay attention to, but understanding that I'm not going to get everything right now.
All right.
Okay.
So yeah, then let's go ahead and you know, the only other like so the big things were within this episode, you know, going and uh going ahead and trying to see this guy speak, calling him out, having having seen the an attack that was in this first episode. Him seeing the fact that Kurisu is stabbed or stand it looks like bleeding, and then brings it up later on, uh, and also something the incident with the Radio Kaikon building itself. Those are like the big focal points.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So episode 2, time travel paranoia. Okabe is deeply unsettled to find Kurisu Makise alive and well, attending the very seminar he believed had been cancelled, with no apparent memory of their earlier encounter. He begins to suspect that something extraordinary has happened to time and that his text message may somehow be connected. Back at the Future Gadget Lab, a cramped apartment above a CRT shop run by their landlord, Mr. Braun, Okabe, Daru, and Mayuri continue tinkering with their phone microwave, a device that has been inexplicably turning bananas into green, gelatinous blobs. Kurisu later shows up at the lab uninvited, and the two have a combative first real meeting, with Okabe stubbornly insisting she is part of some grand conspiracy against him. So I guess something that we didn't really talk about for the first episode is that after he sees Kurisu, presumably he thinks dead or stabbed or whatever, he sends a text message. And I checked, and that text message is going to Daru, but he sends a text message to Daru, and that's when all of like the weirdness happens and everything in the vicinity changes. But so the show is very clear that like something is weird, like it slows down when he goes to press send, and something very weird happens, and it's like, okay, so this is a kind of a focal point that they want you to focus on. And so he's kind of in episode 2, he's kind of like, something is weird with that text message that I sent, because everything seems to be centered around that. There's some other stuff that happened in this episode as well. They do go to the shrine and they meet Ruka, and I didn't get a chance to get his last name, but Ruka is a interesting character because
Urushibara is their last name.
Right, Ruka Urushibara. And so Ruka seems to be a friend of theirs who works at the shrine, and looks on the surface to be very obviously a female, and talks and sounds like a female and stuff like that. But it is made very clear by Okabe himself, kind of talking like in his mind, I guess, or his narration is basically that Ruka is in fact a dude, a guy, a dude. He says it like 3 times, just so you definitely 100% get it. But regardless, Ruka seems to be a very nice person and very kind and friendly, and again just a good friend to both Kabe and Mayuri. So they kind of go and meet with Ruka, and then sort of high and by, and they sort of move on, um, and then they end up meeting the landlord, Mr. Braun, who runs a shop downstairs, and he has the words or the letter CRT on his shirt. So I don't really remember this detail, but it seems like he just runs some kind of electronics shop or like a TV
It's a
shop.
CRT repair shop.
Yeah.
Is what it is. It's focused on CRT repairs. His name is Yugo Tenoji. So
Okay. Yeah. I knew
you could,
that they said his real name, but they just call him Mr. Braun because he's like
and
jacked.
and just like when when someone says Ocarine, he says those like Hyoin Kyoma. It's kind of same as like he calls him Mr. Braun. He says, "Stop calling me that."
Yeah. Yeah. And so right after they introduce the landlord, Mr. Braun, another character comes up, Suzuha Amane, um, and she is a girl that kind of comes right up and basically asks for a job, and they kind of do this little kind of a comedy bit, I guess, where she's like, I want a job," and he kind of tests her, and she's able to answer the test, and it's sort of very snappy, and then he's like, "Okay, you got the job," and then Ocarine comments that they should go on the road, basically, kind of saying that it was sort of some sort of almost like a pre-planned like thing, even though it wasn't. Um, and then besides, so she kind of Suzuha comes in and more or less goes out, just sort of as a quick introduction. Um, then there's later on in the episode a character named Moeka uh, uh, Kiryu is introduced, and she is very strange. So she is remarked upon to be quite beautiful, I guess, by the other characters, especially Daru. Um, but she doesn't really say anything or doesn't like to say things. And she first sees Ocarine, or Ocarine sees her, and she has her flip phone up and she's taking pictures of him. And he's like, "Please don't do that." And but she comes up to him and she says that she needs to speak to Daru, which is sort of odd. But Ocarine kind of says, he says, like he basically says like, uh, "Stop taking pictures of me." And she's like, "Well, if you'll take me to Daru, then I'll delete these photos." And the photos aren't anything bad. They're just she just kind of looks for that as like a leverage point to get him to do what she wants. But he doesn't really acquiesce to that. He's just kind of like whatever, and sort of kind of just goes on. But yeah. So two things that I noticed from this episode is that there's a point where Ocarina is looking on the computer, and he is talking about John Titor, kind of for the first time, sort of in depth, and he mentions that John Titor says he's Japanese, and then he goes on to say some other things about it. And I was like, okay, so John Titor's saying he's Japanese. That's another thing I'm gonna store in my brain here. And then he gets up from his computer and he goes to look for his books that are on John Titor, and he can't find them. He can't find any of the books about this John guy. So he calls Daru about it, and Daru has like no idea what he's talking about. Um, so from this point, I think we can tell that like something is different about um, Okarine's memory um, of what happened and what the facts about the past seem to be. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. It's sort of just it's that you know, for some of these early episodes, it's a lot of buildup, and I would say for maybe the first five, I was just kind of like, okay, and where's this going, and what is the point of what you're trying to tell me? There's a lot of things that they are trying to get set up. At least that's the way it appears to me. Because after about episode 5 or 6 is when things kind of start to coalesce just a little bit, and there's a little bit of direction that is uh, shown in the show.
Yeah, so and I'm trying to remember now, because there was a reason why, um, I always just refer to her as her, the nickname she's given, Shining Finger.
Shining finger, yeah.
But Moeka Kiryu, she when she takes the photo, unknown who he hears the photo snapshot because Japanese cell phones you can't mute the photo sound effect. It's a
Because reasons.
privacy thing. It is all the phones. Therefore, you can't take a candid shot of someone without them being aware of it. Um, so when he hears that sound, he uh Kyoma looks for it, like sees her walking away, and then when he confronts her, yes, I forget why she wants to see, or she wasn't looking for the computer at that moment. I don't believe. Um, I can't remember if she was looking for the IBM or not at that time. I'm kind of drawing a blank.
I don't remember
I know.
either. I think she's mostly she's just trying to get with. She's just mentioning Daru.
Well, see, she doesn't mention Daru, but she mentions she is trying to get information or something, and then he's like, but he mentions how how Daru would have the answer, and she's like, "Well, then give me his number." And then
Okay,
he's
yeah.
just like, "No, then you'll go like, how about you go through me instead?" And that's how they exchanged contact.
Mm.
Um, so that's how that initiate. I forget why he refers to Daru at first to help, and I don't remember if the IBM is specifically mentioned at that point. Uh, but then, yeah, the as far as the message boards or him listening to or talking about John Teeter, he goes, yeah, he goes, for some reason now, he thinks it's a backstory change, because it's like someone posing online as John Teeter, like a fake John Teeter, or like someone rewriting their own story. And that's like, oh, so he's pretending to be Japanese now, or like that's what he's going with. And that makes sense when you think about the main character, considering the fact that his name is Okabe. His childhood friend goes by Ocarine, and but then he has a huge case of like the Chunibyo, syndrome
Mm.
where he's constantly he sees himself as an evil mad scientist, and he's always talking to nobody on the phone, pretending like there's he has agents out, and he sees all these nefarious things that are being planned against him. It's very much that middle school syndrome uh, archetype. Hence the reason why he wants to be called Hyoi and Kyoma, which is just a garbage name, just something made out of thin air. Who then Kirisu is always calling him out on that. And but the so having that kind of mentality, he sees someone like John Teeter just being like, "Hey, I'm a fake time traveler, right? I'm someone posing as a time traveler. I'm doing these posts, and people are eating it up." And then to reinvent yourself or start to change some of your backstory, that's not too far fetched in his eyes. But yeah, so then he does notice, yeah, all his books are gone. He comes there, he's like, "Hey, where's my stuff?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" So completely uh, misses that point. It's just like, so yeah, there's some weird inconsistencies that he's now noticing in his day to day life, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Something about Kurisu is that she has spent like the past 7 years in the United States. Um, and so they kind of throughout the show they kind of make jabs at her for that. He calls her Okabe calls her Christina a lot, and she doesn't like that, and she wants him to stop. So there's a lot of weird stuff in this show with like names and like people being called names that they don't want to be called or don't want to be called anymore, and it's that's just sort of something interesting that I'm noticing now. Um,
Well, it's also once again, it's that Chunibyo syndrome.
yeah,
Everyone has to play a bit. Everyone has an alter ego. It's everyone has an agent designation code name. He always has to have them do the call sign.
yeah.
Uh,
He has them the all the lab people numbered. So like Mayuri is 002, and then I don't know who 001 is. I guess he is, but and then like on and on. And every time there's a new person that gets added to the lab team, which we'll kind of see, as the episodes go on, he says, "You are now lab member 003, 004, 00, so yeah, he proclaims himself to be a mad scientist. It is very Chunibyo. It is very much like, yeah, the guy is like very much self-aggrandizing and not not like he's not really all that he thinks that he is. At least not in the way that he thinks that he is. Not yet anyway.
Yep. I mean, it's exactly it. Instead of having superpowers, his is he sees himself as having far more deductive reasoning and being far more of a genius than chances are his real active station is. But, it's uh, with the Chunibyo, concept is the common one is like the cursed eye and the
Mm.
power in the hand, but in this case it's just his evil genius and him trying to take over the world. So yeah, some pinky in the brain level stuff, just with maybe less active brain cells functioning.
Mm.
So yeah.
Indeed. All right, so I'll go on to episode 3, Parallel World Paranoia. Kurisu, intrigued by the phone microwave's strange behavior, accepts Okabe's offer to examine it, on the condition that she keeps the research secret. The lab members run further tests and begin to suspect that the device may be doing something far more significant than turning bananas to gel. Okabe continues to grapple with his sense that the world around him has changed in ways no one else can perceive, a phenomenon he privately calls reading Steiner. The episode expands the cast as the quirky part-time lab assistant Suzuha Amane is further introduced, um, working downstairs at Mr. Braun's shop, and the group inches closer to understanding the true nature of their accidental invention. Um, so yeah, so the first thing that I kind of with this episode is the reading Steiner. I've not been able to understand what reading Steiner means. And I guess this is just part of that whole same persona thing where he's just making up something that sounds cool. But since Steins Gate, I know Steins Gate is actually like a real scientific thing, real scientific term. I actually don't know what it means. I didn't want to do the research on it because I wanted to let the show kind of just tell me. So I imagine it has something to do with that Steins, not exactly the same, but similar. So yeah, so the reading Steiner was sort of a weird thing to me. Yeah, that that and the bananas don't just turn to gel; like they actually go back to the banana bunch that they were attached to, right? Like they microwave one banana, it turns green into gel, but it also ends up back on the original bunch, which is crazy, right? Like it's teleported almost.
So what happens is originally it's just nuked and turns into the mush, and then by the time
Okay.
they by the time Kurisu is introduced, and they happen to have it teleported to the bunch during the next experiment, when they're trying to recreate it. That's when she shows up, and that's when she comes in, invites herself in. They reference the fact that she's been overseas because she habit of wearing shoes when she walks in.
Mm.
They make a slight jab on it later on too when she's like, "I'll need a fork with the noodles with cup ramen," um, because indicating that she's not proficient with, chopsticks. And when it comes to in this case, she just walks up straight to the banana, the green banana, and like she asks for to something to poke with it, and then they deny her, so she just outright jabs it and tries it out and tastes it without any like qualms, essentially.
Yeah, so it seems like they're trying to say with Carissa that she's not right. It's not that she's really crazy or anything like that. It's just that like not taking your shoes off when you come inside to a house and not being proficient with chopsticks and sort of the other secretive things. There's just something going on with her, and it's these early episodes where I think they kind of lay it on a little bit more thickly, and later on they don't really dwell on it so much until they need to. It seems like, but yeah, some of these things that are coming back up, I'm now really beginning to narrow my eyes at. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, see, so the way I read it in the beginning was just mostly the cultural differences because she's supposed to be, um, very smart, well educated, essentially advanced for her age. Um, she's someone who can talk and disprove scientific theories at the age of 18.
right.
And so she is gifted as far as being very smart, but also she's culturally awkward. And the concept of maybe not having uh, being well with those who are very smart for their age, maybe being not as socially adept at
Mm,
talking with people. And they're always there to point out Okabe. His anytime he names something, it's always essentially north or like he says like Erd or something like all the different or not Bell Dandy. Yeah, I think it's Bell Dandy. He says later on, which they three, and then Skull would be the third sister, which I don't think he names anything after that, but all part of North mythology and stuff like that. So it's kind of his thing. Is very Chunibyo. Mentioning Steins Gate, I don't actually think Steins Gate's a real thing. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. Like, I feel like
okay.
everything he says is just the reading Steiner is to therefore bring it back to his Steins Gate thing. So he's making his own lore and building his own foundation for his own fiction.
Okay.
Is the way I think it is. I actually don't know if there is a Steins Gate thing. To be honest, I've never bothered caring enough to look it up. It's not like the concept like quantum theory or quantum leap or something like that. And so it's kind of neat, but but yeah, that's his whole thing is he needs to make up new words. He needs to rename everybody. He needs to assert his psychology onto others, essentially.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I could have sworn that I'd heard of that there was like some sort of Steins Gate as like a real thing, but maybe I'm getting that mixed up with like Faraday cage or something else. But anyway, willful ignorance on my part. Okay,
or mine. I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah. Um, so I think I can go ahead and go on to episode 4, um, Interpreter Rendezvous. The lab discovers that CERN, SERN, a powerful research organization analogous to the real world CERN, CERN, has been secretly conducting its own time travel experiments, and that some of their findings are hidden within an encrypted document on an old IBM 5100 computer. Needing to crack the encryption, Daru and Okabe seek help from Akihabara's eccentric maid cafe star, Ferris Nyan, as well as the gentle shrine maiden Ruka Urushibara, who is a longtime acquaintance of Okabe's. The episode deepens the show's layered Akihabara setting and highlights how high the stakes could be if CERN's research is as advanced as feared. So the the kind of first thing about this episode is the is that they are kind of going off of the real world CERN that is a most famously known for its Large Hadron Collider. I think it basically it started up operation in the early 90s. I think 1993 was the first time that they actually fired up the Large Hadron Collider, and there's some conspiracy theories about that. There's actually a lot of conspiracy theories about that, and there's some interesting real life science about that I just have heard even fairly recently about the Large Hadron Collider and CERN in real life that they have kind of experimented with micro black holes, like literally creating like black holes, and there is some reason to believe that there is a that they were able to look into or see that alternate realities exist. These are things that I have seen reported. So they do exist, in a more serious context. So it's a it's a little bit, I don't know, less out there I think nowadays, but back in even 2011, I feel like this would have been much less talked about and much less known. But yeah, so CERN is like a real world thing, and then this IBM computer, obviously, kind of supposed to be a analogous to IBM, but basically this old IBM computer has the a way into CERN, and so but they're very rare because they're very old, and but so they need that in order to try to deepen their research and figure out what is really going on with the bananas that are turning into gel and the strange cell phone text messages.
Yeah. Fun enough fact for as we're recording this kind of they just ended up I believe they ended up shutting down the Large Hadron Collider because they're in the process of doing updates to it for high luminosity, and it's supposed to be able to get more granular, even more so.
Mm.
They're supposed to get more stuff from it, and apparently it's supposed to be, I think, targeting operations again back in like 2030 or something like that. It's
Oh
supposed to be
wow.
fully, yeah.
Okay, I guess that's not
Um,
far away. That's not all that far away.
but yeah, so it's kind of a neat thing. Also, yeah, they've used CERN is always a hot fun topic for science and like uh fiction and books. I know Dan Brown's Angels and Demons, the whole concept of them discovering antimatter,
Mm.
and some people thinking of it as like as a slight against the church, and the other people being like, no, 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 it's actually like it actually helps prove like that's part of the argument in the book is like when one of the scientists is like a priest and he's just like as his like definitive proof that God does exist kind of concept.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, but CERN being the forefront of what they do, it's very easy to make them as a scientific foil for anything you want, essentially. Yes. All right. I do enjoy a series like anytime TV or anime will take a name brand that you recognize and tweak it. So like for like Sony or something like that, they'll be like Pony,
Yeah.
a pony staycation or something like
Or
stupid like
Somi
that.
or
Yeah,
yeah.
Panaphonic or something. It's just I always do get a kick out of that, how different brands will be tweaked. Uh,
Yeah.
Also, equally so if it's not just a blatant like, hey, here's a Mountain Dew advertisement right here, front and center, like let me just finish my refreshing drink and put it right in front of the camera. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
There's the laws, the copyright laws are a little bit more strict in Japan for things like that. Is what I always kind of thought was the main reason for that. In the US, you kind of just, or in the West maybe, you just sort of contact that company and just say, "Hey, we're going to have your thing in our show." Or if it's in there accidentally, it doesn't seem to be all that big of a deal. But over there, they are very they're trying to be very aware of that. So they try to make those changes, which is always fun to see how they do.
yeah. But in this episode, how they go to visit the maid, Ferris. So that cafe does exist in Akihabara, and it's still going to this day. I have a friend who, whenever they do visit Akihabara, they end up going to visit. It's cafe like Malicious or something, Mylicious or something
Mm.
like Mylish, and so it's they do have, like, a weird colon in the middle, so I think it might be, like but I always read it as 1, and then I'm like, "Oh, wait, no, there's the colon there," so it's, like, Mylish, um, but yes, most definitely, it's kinda like the pilgrimage for a lot of the nerds. I never bothered going to that maid cafe. I just did the standard. I forget which mainstream. There's a certain maid cafe that's like the McDonald's of maid cafes in Japan, where it's like every major city will have. It's Maid Dreaming, I think it is, and that's the one that's like it gets the job done if you want to just take like family or friends to do the tourist maid thing. I'm like, here you go, here's the thing, and all right, that's it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, this
so
show does have a lot of nods to otaku culture, and sort of like, really like, Daru is one version of otaku. Uh, Ocarine is another version of otaku. Kind of somebody that takes themselves a little bit more seriously, is a little bit less of like the glasses nerd, more or less, but still, nevertheless, very deluded and living in a fantasy world. Daru at least kind of admits that he's living in a fantasy world and he's like okay with it. And then everybody, not everybody else, but a lot of the but like the girls that are around them are sort of, um, whether intentionally or otherwise, they are kind of anime otaku tropes, kind of in and of themselves, and they refer to that a lot. Like they do talk about tsundere and a little bit, and it's it's a show that's very self aware in a lot of ways that I'm actually curious to see how it goes.
well, I mean, even Mayuri, she does cosplay.
Right.
She dresses and makes cosplay stuff, but the whole concept is they live in Akihabara, so that's the thing. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and then you have Ferris, who is the maid. Like she runs the maid cafe. Uh, the they go into a little bit further too, because even with um Kirisu, they drop things here and there, which is slowly outs her.
Mm.
Because at one point they say OTP, and and then she denies it, or she says she come back. She does a comeback on it, and then she realizes the moment she responded, she outed herself, and
Mm.
they kind of poke fun of her a little bit, like, "Hey, you knew what it meant," and so it turns out she knows she's at least a forum, person, so someone who
Forum
does
crawler.
the yeah, to a certain extent. They don't quite talk about too much, but it's just kind of funny how they do, you know, make point that out, and I was just like, okay. So yeah, as far as this episode goes, anything else you think that of note from it?
No, I think that's pretty much it for now. We might come back and have to talk about something from it, but I think that's pretty much all we got for now.
All right.
Okay, so episode 5, Starmine Rendezvous, or Starmine Rendezvous. I don't actually know how to pronounce that word. All right. So, with Daru's hacking skills and the help of the IBN 5100, the group successfully breaks into CERN's classified database and uncovers deeply disturbing records of failed human time travel experiments, grim evidence that CERN has been trying and lethally failing to send people through time. The discovery sends a chill through the entire lab, particularly for Kurisu, and raises urgent questions about what the phone microwave is truly capable of. The group also witnesses the local Tanabata fireworks together, providing a brief moment of warmth and levity that contrasts sharply with what they've just learned. So, a quick aside: they for this part they are looking for an IBM 5100 because they figure out that they need that for the hacking thing, but they don't. But it's such an old computer they're not able to find one, and then it's that they I forget how they find out, but basically they find out that Ruka and her his dad um that at the shrine they have one, and so they ask if they can borrow it, and they say sure. When they go to pick it up, it's very strange because I believe that the dad says that they were told to hold on to it at the shrine, and that they hadn't used it in years, and they hadn't really done anything with it, but they were just told to hold on to it. But it was not. I don't think it ever says who told them to hold on to it. So there's something else kind of going on there. At least I think I'm remembering that right.
All right, so they discover where the 50 all right, so they need the IBM 5100 because it can read the standard base code.
Right.
It was just, it doesn't, it just has that inner ability because it's one of the first, it's like the first generational model. And uh, Mayuri works at the maid cafe as well, happens to bring it up. Ferris is says she has the information that they need, and then gets um, Ocarine to go ahead and she challenges him to a card battle because she hosts card tournament at the place.
Oh, right.
From there, that's when she's turns out she doesn't really have much information, but she mentions having last seen it at a shrine, where he then puts it together, or he gets at least they kind of gloss over, it, but then kind of skip forward, shows up at the shrine, or talks to at least Ruka. Ruka then gets in touch with her father, and yes, exactly. He mentions how uh, he said that to hold it for someone who like desperately needs it, or essentially. Um, and not much else information has been given about that. Just he was said to hold it. He has to borrow it. He says yes, and then that's when they take it with him.
Right, right. So, so yeah, that's kind of leading up to that point. But the kind of the crux of the episode is that they figure out that CERN has been trying and failing to send people through time, and there's a bunch of reports that they kind of look through, and then they kind of corroborate this, I think, with some news articles that are around the same time, and kind of say like someone like we found somebody that was turned into jelly, So it's kind of wild stuff like that. Um, yeah, so I think that's most of what happens in this episode. That's like really important. I honestly don't really remember the fireworks scene that was going on. I guess I just my eyes glazed over. I was thinking about the other stuff that was going on, but yeah,
So what happens is they mention the fireworks on a couple different occasions. One, there's two different separate instances. One is the Suzuha runs into uh, Ocarine. They talk for a bit. She gets weirded out because of the helicopter. He says, "Oh, it's a news chopper because of the fireworks festival." They never mentioned Tanabata specifically,
mm,
or at least I don't think they do. They might have shown a poster or something. Maybe that's how it's confirmed. But anyways, they mentioned the fireworks, and she's like, "Oh wait, fireworks for real?" Like, and he's like, "You've never seen them?" And she's like, "No." And like, and then he explains, "Follow the road down. You'll go see them." She even then sends him a text message of the fire, like showing a picture of the fireworks, which I then thought to myself, that's bogus because there's no way you can get a good, clear photo of fireworks from, especially an older cell phone camera.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, but then at the same time, also, I believe Kurisu is walking with Miuri, and Mayuri then like mentions the fireworks. Something comes up, and at that time, I think Kurisu leaves. She says, "We'll have to do something. I'll have to hang out again or see another time," and she leaves. Um, but yes, so the fireworks are mentioned. Not a huge significance other than kind of what I just mentioned. That's pretty much the gist of the fireworks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we can go on if you're ready.
Yep.
All right. Episode 6, Butterfly Effects Divergence. The lab formalizes their discovery that the phone microwave can send text messages to the past, dubbing them D-mails. There's a whole thing about that, but they end up with D-mails. They began cautiously experimenting with the technology. Okabe notices that each successful D-mail causes a subtle but real shift in the world around him, detectable only through his reading Steiner ability, while everyone else remains unaware that anything has changed. The group starts to grapple with the philosophical and practical weight of what they're doing, as even small changes to past events ripple outward in unexpected ways. Karisu's scientific mind and Okabe's paranoid instincts begin to clash and complement each other as the research accelerates. So, yeah, I don't really remember a whole lot of the details of the like little things that happen in this episode. I feel like Moeka is around a little bit. I know that she takes the D5100, sorry, not the D, but the IBM 5100 at some point. I don't remember if it's in this one. But yeah, like that. This is sort of
She
like,
never takes it. She
okay,
tries to ask for it. She asks to borrow it, and they stop her from trying to grab it.
right,
So she doesn't actually get a chance to, and they, as far as yeah, once again, going back to Okarin's whole concept of naming and how it's kind of a joke. Everyone literally just boos his original naming convention for trying to do. Um, I forgot what he originally tries to name. He names it the Kyoma something, like
yeah, very
male or
wordy, ridiculous,
yeah,
yeah,
well, it's like,
names.
but he tries to make it an acronym, and they're all making fun of him, like as if it's like KFC essentially, like that,
Okay,
like
yeah,
KDM or something, and they just and then they all try to come up with their own names, eventually coming down to DeLorean mail,
oh yeah,
uh, and
yeah,
that's where the D mail comes into play. So very much knowing the nerd, grouping that's going to be watching this would get a reference and understand. Uh, Now, outside of that, there's I'm trying to remember how much more is involved with Mocha. 'Cause right now at this point, Mocha is just she's a very odd duck, and it's yeah she doesn't she refuses to speak almost at all, and only wants to communicate via text.
right.
Um, I'm trying to remember in this episode whether or not she gets to send out a text. And also, I believe at this point, they also they have I think they've already sent out the text message with like the previous lotto numbers. Um,
Yeah, this might be that one. It's either this one or maybe the next one. Yeah, it's the next one.
okay.
But yeah, so they're kind of starting to think about experimenting with that. And it's I don't think it's a little bit yet before they really sort of explain the rules of how these things are actually working, but we're getting closer to those things.
Okay.
All
Uh,
right.
yeah, I think that's it for this episode then, I believe.
Yeah, there's several here in the middle that are kind of like, okay, we're just sort of establishing more rules and stuff, and we'll just have to go through them like that. All right, so episode 7, Divergence Singularity. That's the right one, right? Yeah. Divergence Singularity. After Daru upgrades the phone microwave's firmware, Okabe decides to push the D-mail experiment further by sending the winning lottery numbers back in time. The test appears to succeed, But Okabe quickly realizes that altering the past has consequences he hadn't fully considered. The present has shifted in ways that benefit someone else entirely. The episode is a sharp and somewhat comedic illustration of how the butterfly effects work, as the group sees firsthand that you can't tinker with causality without unintended results. It also deepens Okabe's understanding of how precarious their situation is becoming. So, I do remember that when he sends the winning lottery numbers back, um, Ruka then um, comes up and says that she put them in, but she made a mistake, and so that's why they didn't win the lottery. Which they weren't aiming for the highest amount of money; they were aiming for like the third largest amount of money. And I don't really think that Ocarine really says why to the others, but to me it seems pretty obvious. It's like, hey, if you do this, you don't want to attract attention. You don't want to start being like,
Oh no, he puts us out.
oh,
That's exactly why. He starts sweating bullets. It's too much money, and he starts because at first he's like, and they all make fun of him because, or they all hassle him because the first thing he does is we should send the winning lotto tickets, and everyone's like, why don't we do something else? Um, and then he finally, he bulls his way through to get these lotto tickets, and they're like, all right, let's go. Actually, and then of course, Debtor is always, he's like down for it. He's like, yeah, let's get rich. But then when he hears how much the money is, he's like, well, what about number two? Okay, how about the third? And they kind of make he gets made fun of a little bit for uh having to downplay
his
his
own
own plan.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that's pretty much that's the main reason. Is despite all his boasting, he's still like about being evil and stuff like that. He's still like a nice guy who's also kind of a coward, but
Okay.
but his own curiosity is essentially that's his driving entity throughout this whole thing. It's just like curiosity at best, despite possible um blindly going through because of curiosity, despite what the outcomes might render.
Well, it's also convenient because like throughout the show, early on, and throughout, they are talking about how they don't have any money. Like they're broke and they don't have any money, and so it's sort of keeping in with that because if for somehow they do win the lottery, a big bunch of money, then they can't really keep going with that, which I think is kind of key to the personality of the show. And then it ends up that they don't win at all, like anyway. To me, I was like, I mean, you might think that you want to win the lottery, but in this situation, you don't really want to be attracting that much attention to yourself. So it actually, so to me, you just want to prove that you can do it and work around the periphery until you can figure out how to get more. But yeah, I guess him chickening out is a big factor as well.
Yeah, he's just once again, he's kind of afraid to draw that much attention, but also afraid to what if he changes the future. He does figure out that upon sending the message and the timeline, like the time jump happens or whatever, he realizes they're all talking about what to send, not realizing it has already been sent. Or like they already had this discussion, and then it's later on, essentially, is when um, Ruka comes in and says, is very apologetic about misremembering the numbers that she was given, and then they're like, "Wait a minute, so you did do it?" So they kind of realize, obviously, something had happened, but none of them remember. So
Right. And I guess it's probably where like the causality sort of and unintended results is coming along or being implemented here because they tried to win the lottery, but but there's if they had won the lottery, then maybe like a lot of other stuff wouldn't happen, and so the butterfly effect or whatever, in order to keep things making sense in this reality, it had to make Ruka forget the numbers. I don't know. I'm kind of just wondering if maybe there's something involved with there, because I found that like a little bit too convenient that like, oh, but she just forgot the numbers, you know?
So it kind of comes back again later on with the shift of uh, Akibara later.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll, so I don't want to kind of lean too much into that. But essentially, yeah, there is the potential of maybe things need to stay the way they are. So they're poor and they're going to stay poor,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Okay, I can go into episode 8 here. Chaos Theory Homeostasis Part 1. Okabe pulls Daru and Karisu aside to explain in full how his reading Steiner works and what the divergence meter readings mean, essentially laying out the rules of the show's time travel logic for both the characters and the audience. The three form a more intentional inner circle within the lab, taking their research more seriously. Meanwhile, the eccentric and beloved Ferris Nyanyan becomes involved in the group's demail activities in a more direct way, as personal motivations begin to surface around who wants to use the device and why. The episode marks a tonal shift as the implications of their power become more personal. So I believe this is the episode before, or maybe the end of this episode kind of leads up to the changing of Akihabara. So I think this is where they go to meet Ferris.
This is before that. So this
Okay.
is where, at this point, this is going to be uh, Rika's request because believing that they should have been born a girl and
Mhm.
wanting to send a text message to or a message to their mother to eat more vegetables, I believe it was, believing that there's a correlation between vegetables and having girls and eating meat and having boys. And at that point, uh, Okabe is like, sure. And then, of course, Dara's like, "Are you sure about this?" He's like, "That's just, it's like there's no harm in it. If it makes him feel better, then let him do it." That's like there's no scientific means behind it. And even uh, Kurisu's like, "Yeah, this is it's all gibberish." It's so they go ahead and uh, go through with the text. Notices a shift, as he does, but he can't figure out what the shift is. Sees Rika there, but said like doesn't know how, like can't see any physical change. She's not all of a sudden doesn't see like a chest on them or anything like that. Like so can't really tell what's going on. And is afraid to ask. Literally saying, I can't ask that question. Um, and can't see anything else that has been really different. I believe at this point, um, no, not this point. Okay, yeah, and so that's kind of the big crux of their experiment this time around. It's not until the end of this one where the next episode, I believe, is where they talk about the whole Akiba stuff and
Yeah.
Ferris's request.
Yeah, so I did pull these summaries off of AI, and it does seem like it has failed us here, because it is saying that the Ruka stuff that you're talking about happens in episode 10. But when I was reading through this, I was like, I could have sworn that happened like earlier than that. So yeah, I guess that's just the limits of AI right now. But yeah, if you yeah, so anyway, I guess that's just the way that it is. But so so episode 8 is mostly about kind of that stuff leading up to Ruka's request and the change there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And that's kind of how it ends. That's kind of like the gist of that episode is just like, hey, um, something happened. We sent the message. Something happened. They obviously, um, they felt the change, but like they don't know what in the world has changed. And yeah, that's kind of it, I believe.
Okay. All right. Episode 9, Chaos Theory Homeostasis Part 2. Um, So let's see. So Ferris, having learned about the phone microwave, becomes eager to send a D-mail of her own for deeply personal reasons tied to her past and her father. Okabe is reluctant, but ultimately agrees, and the consequences of her demail lead to one of the most striking world line shifts yet. Akihabara itself is transformed, its beloved moe and otaku culture apparently erased from the current timeline. The change is jarring and bittersweet and serves as a powerful reminder that every alteration to the past rewrites not just events but entire cultural histories and people's lives. So I know that there's like I believe that there is like a kind of a double episode shift where this like Akihabara stuff kind of happens like at the end of one episode, but it isn't really kind of followed up on until the beginning of the next episode. And I guess this is like where that is. But yeah, so somewhere in here in this episode, Ferris, they go to see her in her apartment, and she's obviously really young like them, but she has this really nice apartment that overlooks the city and like overlooks like all of the Akihabara kind of area. And they're like, "Wow, this is crazy." And she basically tells them that her family had a hand in basically building Akihabara into what it is as like a kind of a nerd culture mecca, nerd culture like center point. And so
Yeah,
you're
the
like,
Moe culture is pretty much because of her. Her family owns most of the land, and essentially, yeah, it's mostly her domain. She has a butler. She's like 17. She has a butler.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, if you own the land in Akihabara, which is in Tokyo, like if you had a significant portion, yeah, you'd have to be mega, mega, mega rich. I mean, just the rent
it's
alone.
I say it'd be owning land, major blocks of land, any major city, saying like, "Hey, I own half of Manhattan" or something,
Yeah, it would,
something crazy like that.
or even like the Bronx, or even but just owning
Beans
several
or something,
blocks
yeah,
would be
yeah.
tons, mega, mega, mega rich. So that's kind of the money that they're kind of talking about here. But so she kind of offhandedly says that, and they're like, "Oh, cool, so you're rich and stuff." But she basically says that she I forget exactly how she words it, but basically she wants her dad to be involved in her life more, or to have been involved in her life more. I can't remember if her dad had passed away, and that's what she was trying to stop.
They don't say anything.
Okay,
They actually skirt the issue
okay,
because he demands to know what she's sending. She says it's a secret, and then the other two with her, both Daru and Mayuri, they're like, no, Mayuri's like, you can't. It's a girl's secret. You're not supposed to know or something.
okay.
Like they shame him. So he just gives in. He's like, okay, I'll send this blind message without knowing anything about it.
Well, I think I like he. I guess he agrees, but for a little while there, Ferris is like, maybe I don't need to send this, and they're kind of like, well, like which is it? And it's sort of an awkward situation. But eventually, she's like, okay, and then she goes ahead and sends it, and that's when everything changes. Um, and they kind of cross over to the new timeline, more or less. Or Okabe is the only one that remembers, obviously, but he kind of turns around, and I guess this is sort of the beginning of episode 10, but I'll just kind of, but it doesn't really, the summary doesn't really touch on it, so I will. He kind of turns around, and then there's Ferris's dad, and then like Ferris comes in the room, and it's like, okay, so now Ferris's dad is in her life, and but also things seem to be a little bit different with the area.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and part of this is the fact that the upon sending this, uh, they also don't have access to the IBN anymore. That disappeared.
Right.
That's why I wasn't sure if you were thinking that.
Yeah, I got my wires
You know,
crossed there because it seemed like she wanted to take it, and then
she
it
did try to take it. They
wait,
boxed it up and they
and
put it away.
and so I was like, and so like then flash forward to some more text messages, and it's gone. And I was like, wait, did she take it? So the Joe's doing a pretty good job of gaslighting, even me, as I'm kind of going through this stuff. But yeah, it's just that time is shifting and the butterfly effect is taking hold and moving things around.
Yes. So because it's gone, uh, they go ahead and ask the father about it too. Because so it's like, and like, oh yeah, it's like it's like kind of a an old blast from the past kind of deal. And it's like, nope, it's like it's like, and then it's like, did you happen to drop it off at the shrine? And they're like, he's like, I don't know what shrine you're talking about, you know. So yeah, they obviously they changed enough of it to warrant at least this much. And I'll let you go ahead and go into episode 10. We can continue talking about this.
Okay. Okay. So this was the one that the summary was a little bit messed up, but basically, Okabe. So episode 10, Chaos Theory Homeostasis Part 3. Okabe and the lab work to understand and reverse the changes caused by Ferris's D-mail, eventually restoring Akihabara to its familiar state, though not without some effort, with effort and some emotional weight around what was gained and lost in the process. Um, and so it's around this time. I don't remember if it's this one or the next episode where Okabe, where Okarine and Kurisu have kind of a late night like a late night moment where they are kind of on a playground and they kind of talk to each other about um, sort of you could kind of hear more about Kurisu's kind of troubled past, more or less, with her father. I think it was in this episode because I don't think it was in episode 11. Um, but yeah, so some of that happens as well, and then I feel like there's a little bit more with Suzuha that that is not really mentioned here, but she's kind of so there's something weird that happens in one of these episodes. I think it's already passed, but where Suzuha meets Kurisu with Okabe around, and Suzuha does not like Kurisu. And she doesn't say why, but she just gives her she just stares daggers at her. And Kurisu, in I think the dub, says, "Oh, well, if looks could kill, you know." Um, so there's some kind of weird animosity there that uh, isn't really laid out, but it is sort of interesting.
Yeah, they mentioned that happened quite a bit before, because when they first meet, she happens to be taking down the shutters to the store, uh, and so she has the pole in which to to grab the shutter. She instantly puts it like she's going to unsheath a sword, ready. So in this case, Suzuha has it ready to like bash in or like to cut down Kurisu, and just glares at her. And that's when and they're interrupted by Mr. Braun saying, "Hey, let's close up shop." And then she leaves
Right.
it be. And then occasionally they will make contact, and just exactly always ends up her just giving her like the stink eye, essentially.
Yeah.
Uh,
Something else with Suzuha is like one of the first times that she talks with Okabe, she talks about like they're sitting on the steps, on some steps, and she's talking about how she wishes that she could get to know. There's some another thing with parents in there, like where she wishes that she could have gotten to know her parents or kind of knew where they were or something like that. So there's something there as well. I just wanted to touch on it. I just kind of remembered it out of the blue.
well, this is around the time where she talks about her father.
Okay, maybe that's
Um,
it.
so yeah, there's a lot to her character that
Well,
is very
Karisu talks about
unknown.
her father on the playground, but
Also, no, but
yeah,
also Susan, she talks about trying to, because he said, well, because Okabe's like, hey, that's when he later on dubs her as the newest member, lets her and says, hey, I'll send it, send the phone a message back, and she said, you're a really kind person. Obviously, I don't. He left a long time ago. I can't send a message back there. Like if
yeah,
I don't know their number, I can't send a message.
Yeah.
So the other bit was um, Suzuha has there's a lot of weird things with Suzuha. At one point, uh, talks about torture. She gets very uh jumpy at that moment. And she also at one point he says, she said, "You look wiped." He's like, he makes a reference to being brainwashed. Then she literally like he's on a bench, and so she mounts him, grabs his eyes and pries them open, and glares at him for a hot minute, and been like, "Okay, you're not chipped," and then bounces,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And there is something that happens in one of these episodes where Okabe kind of forgets himself and ends up feeling up Ruka because
That's
they're
this episode. That's further in this episode.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
So
So
So what happens is in this episode, essentially, starting from the beginning, is the in episode 10, the that's when they, like I said, they realize how much Akihabara has changed, um, and part of that is, they try to. He also tries to figure out, like, well, how did we all meet? Because obviously, if Akihabara is not this otaku, mecca that it is, it doesn't make sense, and um, that's when uh, Daru is like, he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I had you guys like I had food poisoning, and I had Mairi and you like fill in for me at the card game, and that's how. And then you got completely stomped, but Mairi and Ferris got along real well. And then he makes the offhanded comment, and we're like, okay, despite everything has changed, we still wound up again, still together as friends, you know.
mhm.
So like kind of like that still happened, even though the odds of it seemed like it shouldn't have. Uh, so and then also the girls were talking. They were talking about going to the beach, and at that time, Kurisu's like, "Yeah, we're not going to the guys, but with us girls, we can go." And that's when Okabe's like, "Yeah, you can't bring Ruka. She's because it's a guy." And then Ruka starts getting really upset. Everyone's getting really pissed, and then that's when he's like, "No, no, it's like Ruka's a guy, obviously," and then goes to grope grope him, now a her, and then that's when he realizes, oh, that text message actually happened. Um,
That worked.
and that yeah, so I guess just coincidentally by changing her diet, the mom changing the diet, they got to. But what they did is it wasn't to. They ran into that was the kind of fun part too. Is I believe it was having to change it. They have a character limit because they can only send so much file size
Right.
through, and to minimize the characters because they still weren't. They had to convert it from modern text messaging to a pager, and the limitations of the pager, so they had to shorten the message. So it said like to have a healthy child, eat lots of vegetables or something like that. And so by eating the vegetables, and then Ruka's theory about eating veggies making a girl happen. So that's that was the shift, I guess, that he couldn't figure out when he first happened. And yeah, so from there, I'm trying to remember what else happened with that. That was um
I,
yeah,
I
I,
I don't remember if it's in this episode or a previous one or the next one, but there's a point at which they go down. It's like the second time that they go down to the CRT repair shop, and there's like excessive like noise coming from upstairs, or they think it is. And then the second time that they go down, they figure out that whenever the
that's the next episode.
okay. Then, well,
So
I'll just finish it up because it doesn't really talk about it in the summary. But basically, whenever there's a certain TV that whenever it's on downstairs, that it makes it sound like there's stuff coming from, it's like there's a cacophony coming from upstairs, and they figure out that that TV has to be on, and they have to be doing the other stuff in order, and but using the phone microwave in order for the text messages to actually go through. So there's some text messages that they figure out have not actually affected the past. So the plot kind of thickens there.
Yeah. So what happens towards the end of episode 10 still is, um, you get a glimpse of Okabe's past. They end up having talk about like he got sick, and that's kind of the sickness he got is similar to how he feels when he goes through the like the Steins Gate, or he has, like the reading Steiner ability
Mm-hmm.
that he has. He equates it to that because Mayuri mentioned like when he was sick, she was very concerned for him, but the look on their face, his face now when he comes to from the reading Steiner, it reminds her of when he was a child.
Right.
And then he's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. That's I feel the same way afterwards each time too." So that's when he's kind of like maybe that's when I awakened kind of deal. Um, because he considers himself, thanks to Teeter, he has like that divergence, like he's a 1% divergence kind of person, which he can, it's like a shifting timeline or diverging timeline, not necessarily parallel worlds, as it were. And this is also the episode where Suzuha is talking about she's having to leave, and she's going to try to go meet up with her father one last time.
All right.
Um, or she's going to try one more attempt to try to find her father. Um, and then they're like, okay, well, let's set up a party. And the party, if everything goes well, it's a congratulations. If not, it's condolent. Like, but
Mm.
like, so they kind of set that up. But yeah, and then episode 11, which is um, Dogma in Event Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
That one talks about they discovered the CRT downstairs because they have mentioned before, and when the microwave is being tested, it's creating like seismic thumps underneath in the um, downstairs.
Yeah.
So
Driving
that's when
Mr.
yeah,
Braun kind of crazy, but yeah.
yeah, so and that's when they discover like the 40-inch CRT. The reason why I don't, because at first he's like, oh yeah, it only works three times during these times of the day. Well, they discover it works during those times of the day is because that's when the TV is on downstairs.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that works as the lifter, in which it kind they quote unquote, I don't know what terms, but they call it a lifter. And that was the big scientific breakthrough, that like one of the missing links to their concept or the chain of how this works.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Um, so I'll
Oh,
just read this summary for episode 11 real quick. So, Dogma in Event Horizon. The lab begins working toward an even more ambitious leap. Rather than sending text messages into the past, Karisu theorizes they could send a person's actual memories back in time, a concept she calls a time leap. While Okabe and Mayuri are out shopping for parts, they run into the mysterious and taciturn Moeka Kiryu. Kiryu. And after an awkward exchange, she abruptly disappears again. Back at the lab, preparations for the time leap machine continue, but Okabe receives a deeply unsettling piece of information suggesting that Kurisu may not be who she appears to be, casting a shadow of doubt over one of the lab's most trusted members at the worst possible moment.
yeah. And yeah, that's generally the gist of it. I mean, they're at this point, what she says is she's like, Suzuha's like, yeah, she works for CERN, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
and so when you kind of look back at the beginning of the show and some of the other stuff that's cropped up, it's like, okay, now we have a lot of reason to believe that she is not who she says that she is, or she's lying or trying to get something, and because she was, I mean, at the beginning of the show, and they kind of referenced it throughout. She is on the cover of a magazine called Sciency, which I found that name to be pretty funny. But she's on the cover of that, and she also was giving a speech whenever Okabe met her. I guess like the second time he met her, she was giving a speech basically saying that she didn't believe in time travel or time machines at all, and that it wasn't like possible. And she thought it was silly.
Yeah.
That and some other things are like, okay, now putting the pieces together, yeah, there is an argument that she is not one of us.
Uh, but this is the episode in which uh, she goes, Kurisu talks about her father and how her father and her father's a scientist and he loved the concept of time travel. She would talk to him about it. And she really enjoyed it, and then it was a thing that they shared. She really didn't care about the science so much, but she enjoyed the interactions between the two.
Okay.
But then as she progressed, she got smarter. She was debunking his theories, kind of like what she did in the very beginning to Okabe right off the bat. When like, and she makes the joke about the Tartarus and stuff like that in the beginning. So that's to the point where her father straight up like insults her. Like he treats her like trash. And then that's why she was hesitating on trying to upgrade the machine in order to send back the essentially the mental data because the from upgrading from sending text messages to sending your mind over, but she was kind of not working as fast, or she had a slight hesitation because she just kind of subconsciously was fearing the retaliation from her father. And
Right.
yeah, so that is the big portion of that. They also mention in this episode that Daru comes by and is like, I tried connecting to the system and it couldn't because it was already on or connected. And then they realized they were currently patched into CERN. Um,
Right. And so yeah, that's sort of like the dun dun dun. Like we have actually been connected to CERN, like maybe not the whole time, but for a substantial amount of time, if
yeah,
not the
and
whole
so
time.
yeah, unknowing, like it's like, but they kind of left it open, kind of like, so they're not really looking too heavily into it because they're like, well, if they were to do something, they would have done something by now. That's kind of
Mm.
roughly where they were. Um, so yeah, but at the same time, Okabe has gotten a couple text messages here and there that were threatening. It's just like
Yeah.
the most recent for that episode. This episode was like couldn't quite tell what it was, like a doll or something like that with like a head,
So,
like
so
like
yeah, there's
like
there's
blood.
like there's like 2 points at which through this where it gets gruesome, and the first part is where Karisu has been stabbed and bloody, and that's the way that they shoot that. It's kind of gruesome. You're like, okay, that's weird, but then there is some kind of doll head or baby head or something that has been that has blood on it or whatever, and it's a picture they only show for a moment, but they show it, and it's like a threat, and it's he also is receiving other text messages that are vaguely threatening, like stop it or you're not supposed to be doing this or something like that.
And so while they're still talking about CERN and not like they would have done something by now. This, in the background,
It's
has
like
this
they
in the
kind of
foreground of their mind, but hasn't told anyone else. Um, so
so
it's
he's like they kind of have been, and I just haven't really been telling you guys.
yeah, so very sloppy on their part.
Yeah.
Um,
So there are some things that I noticed, especially early on. Didn't notice them as much later. I don't know if they just kind of didn't happen as much later. There are many times in the first like 2 episodes, especially, where they will show a that they will show a scene for a very short amount of time. Mostly it doesn't really matter. Like there's one where they show a cell phone page and it doesn't really like you can freeze frame on it. It doesn't really seem to be saying much, but except what they're already telling you. So I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. But there's another one in episode 1, I believe, where they flash an image for about 5 frames. I think it literally is about 5 frames. It's very, very fast. And it is a blurry image of what seems to maybe be like a desert. And I noticed they did that, and I was like, why did they do that? So I went back and like freeze framed it and like, frame by frame found it, and I was like, okay, that's weird. I don't really understand why they did that, but I just wanted to point that out. There's those two instances, and then there's maybe one or two others where they show you a frame for like just a microsecond, and I find that very strange compared to a lot of other anime, because there's almost no other anime or even shows that really do that, and usually there's a reason that somebody would go put that in there.
Yeah, I don't remember if they explain it at one point.
Okay.
Maybe it hasn't come yet. There's a small blurb, nothing too much, kind of talking a little bit about the desert, and so maybe it's not here yet, but it's
Okay.
like so I thought it might have happened. I honestly thought it did, but I can't remember, to be honest.
That's okay.
So
That's okay.
yeah, so I don't want to say anything else without potentially doing an accidental spoiler for you at this point.
Not
And
when we're so
uh,
close.
yeah, right, exactly. Then with this, one of the big things we've been kind of skipping over too is the um Okabe has been kind of doing chat room stuff with Teeter as well, on and off.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that because he has struck up a conversation, and Teeter does seem to be kind of interested in what they're really doing, but not, it doesn't really know like all the answers.
Yeah, because when during the one of the first shifts, then they said in Okabe's like, "Hey, now the storyline is they're Japanese. Where did all my books go? All this, and there used to be lots of other internet forums about them, and
Right.
now there's very few. And there's like, and they kind of bring up in the conversation in one of the forums uh, about the past, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I hadn't been to that timeline." It's like,
You've never
and they
been to
kind
the
of
year
just want to,
2000.
and
That's
then
one of them,
happens
yeah.
to just stop talking about it, and then a couple episodes later brings up 2000 again, or and starts talking a little bit more about other things like, huh. So and then that's when it explains like the whole reading Steiner, as he calls it. It's like, but he's like, yeah, Teeter's like, well, it sounds like you might be 1% divergent, and kind of explaining not quite parallel worlds, but the idea of uh being the it's like the Schrodinger's cat concept of being the observer, so
Oh,
the whole
okay.
parallel worlds, like none of them exist until it's actually observed by an outside
I see
force.
what you're saying. Yeah.
But but being the fact that like, oh yeah, they changed something from the past, which then kind of ripples to the future, but then happens, no one would know about it, and it just kind of or deviates to the timeline, or things naturally just shift and change. But because of this innate ability, main hero syndrome or whatever, they end up they're the ones who get to notice the change and observe. So that's kind of the yeah, it's just one of those big things. It's like there's a lot going to unpack, and it's coming at you so fast when you're first going through with Teeter, and there's a lot more questions. Teeter was supposed to be at you know this book, or this like time travel forum
Right.
that Daru was holding, and then turns out that there's kind of a correlation between that and what um uh what's her name,
Carissa or Momoika? Okay.
Suzuha was trying to meet her father at at the thing, and it's like at a
Right.
thing, so it's like it could probably, it sounds like it's the same thing. She's trying to meet her father, um and so it's kind of like,
Because
okay,
Daru had to miss that because
Naru
they,
missed it
yeah.
because they tried throwing the surprise party for Suzuha. Um, Suzuha, and that's when Suzuha tries to disappear, but then Okabe decides to send a message saying, "Hey, follow her," so she doesn't, so you can just get her to stick around, So he changed. He's actively willing to change. He's like at first he's afraid, but he's just like, you know, are you not like a mad scientist? You know, so he just does. He answers to his whims because that is what a egomaniac does essentially. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
doesn't really, and that's and then it's stated multiple times that, for example, Mayuri has a better vision for the broader picture, opposed to someone like Okabe who doesn't, because they play like they're talking about like a card game or this board game that they're playing, and Kurisu says like it says how Okabe can only see right in front of him. He doesn't see the bigger picture. And then Kurisu later on mentions, or at least I thought it was in this one. Maybe it's further on, but she says Mayuri has a pretty good understanding of the overall picture, and it's kind of interesting to analyze themselves like that to that extent.
Right.
Um, but yeah, all right, those are first 11 episodes. As the series goes on, it gets more interesting, but still not quite the hook or like the thing that everyone raves about and like why it's a must watch. It's just at this point kind of interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So that will hopefully come next. But yeah, so made it through the first 11 episodes, so should be able to get the rest done and then come back and talk about it some more.
All right, and we're back now. We just finished episodes 1 through 11, and we specifically stopped at 11 because 12 is when things start to get more interesting. All right, so here we are. We're going to be finishing 12 to 24. All right, Nick, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so yeah, it changes quite a bit. Um I can only imagine what it was like to watch this without anybody to tell you it gets weird after 11. Um but so I feel like that would probably be like the ultimate like what is really what is going on here. Um but going into episode 12, because episode 12 starts very strangely. Episode 12 starts with um some really strange words from Mayuri, um and or Mayuki, I forget her name, dang it. But it starts with some very strange words, and you're kind of like, what is is going on here? And then it really opens up into um the the point that the show is really trying to get to. Watching 12 through 24, I kind of look back at 1 through 11 as like all it's like all preamble. It's all like we're going to do a little of this, we're going to do a little of that, we're going to lull you to sleep and make you think that this show is about one kind of silly plucky group of people who are doing crazy science, and then we're going to go nope, it's much more advanced and serious than that.
And yeah, that's why it's a big ask. I always tell people make it go watch the first half 1 through 12. If you make it to the after that, if you want to give up, then fine. I'm sorry for wasting the last 12 episodes of your life. But if after 12, if you want to give up, that's up to you. And yeah, no one's ever stopped. It's like once you make it to 12, not only are you pot committed, but now you're wholly interested in it. Yeah, so episode 12 is Donna in what was that Ergosphere? So the yeah, this one, as you mentioned, yeah, Mayuri, she is in. You have a desert background, talking about the beginning of time and some, like existential issues there. But most definitely, the whole series up to this point has led you with some minor mysteries, some weird tension, but nothing too serious. And yeah, so why don't you go ahead? You've been going off on the descriptions, so I'll let you go ahead and recap it then.
Yeah, so really quickly about that. So last time we were using an AI put together summaries. I did that because I didn't want to have any spoilers, so I wanted to specifically tell Claude to create these summaries and not have spoilers. But Claude, did not really perform particularly amazingly. There's definitely some portions that got mixed up and stuff like that. So now that we don't have to worry about spoilers, at least not as much, at least for me anyway. I'm just going to be going off of the Wikipedia summaries. So we'll be going off of that, but they should be a little bit more stable this time. So yeah, I'll go ahead and start with episode 12, Dogma in Ergosphere. With the ability to utilize CERN's LHC to compress memories into D mail size, Kurisu completes her time leap machine capable of sending one's memories up to 2 days into the past. However, Rintaro, still disturbed by the threatening text he has received, decides against using the device, suggesting they instead make their discoveries public. As the lab members decide to have a party, Kurisu comes into conflict with Suzuha, who claims she is destined to become a CERN spy in the future. But Mayuri manages to calm things down between them. While a bomb threat to the rail system is televised, Suzuha, after hearing about the lab's connection to CERN, flees the lab. Led by Moeka, a group of armed men storms the lab, who reveals herself to be a rounder hired by CERN. So Moeka reveals herself to be a rounder hired by CERN. She orders Rintaro, Kurisu, and Daru to be detained before shooting and killing Mayuri, whom she deems to as not being necessary. And so that is where that's where it leaves you at the end of episode 12 is it's taken kind of a serious turn, it's taken a darker turn. The people, the CERN thugs storm in and they just shoot Mayuri. And that's where the episode ends. And you're like, holy crap, this has completely shifted everything around from what I thought it was. Yeah, so that's kind of the mic drop that the show does. And really probably the biggest claim to fame that the show has, I would say, even after, I don't know, I haven't watched, the extraneous stuff, the movie or, Steins Gate Zero or anything like that yet. But for these 24 episodes, I think that is probably the biggest punch that the show throws at you is right here.
Yeah, without a doubt. Granted, the entire time you're also screaming at your screen, or at least me and other people I know were like, of course, Moeka is going to be like the traitor. She's the weirdest one of them all. Like the fact that you just let some, it's just like it was weird. It's almost kind of ham-fisted in how she just joins the group, So it's just like made most sense.
She is weird, but like she is also like there's also a lot of anime has like a weird character that fits into that trope. And then it's like, well, we have one that likes to eat, and we have one that likes to dance, and we have one that always is sleepy, and we have one that's weird. And it's like, okay, so she's just that trope. So yeah. It uses your perception of anime against you so that you're not suspecting her maybe as much as maybe other genres or ever other types of media would make you do so.
Yeah. And also at the same time, you're looking at it being like, well, at least with, in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, of course, she's been interested in the old computer from the start. That's the IBN. It's like, so it all starts to click together real quickly. And yeah, like I said, if you make it to the end of episode 12 and you're like, yeah, I'm done. I'm like, well,
I don't know how.
I'm really curious. I'm really curious about your Rorschach test. Like, hey, what do you see when we see this image? Because there's something different about someone who just gives up after episode 12. But this is when the roller coaster ride comes. You hit the fulcrum point, and now you're strapped in and just ready to go. So yeah, episode 12. The start of it all, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. All right, episode 13, Metaphysics Necrosis. All right. Moments after Mayuri's death, Suzuha rushes into the lab and creates a distraction, uh, allowing Kurisu to use the time leap machine to send Rintaro back in time to 5 p.m. the same day. Rintaro drives everyone out of the lab before frantically searching for Mayuri, during which he receives a call from Kurisu, who deduces that he made a time leap. Finding Mayuri, Rintaro attempts to flee with her to the station, only for the trains to have stopped. When they are both approached by rounders, they attempt to flee, but Mayuri is once again killed when she is run over by Moeka's car. Escaping the rounders' clutches and performing another time leap, Rintaro locates Mayuri earlier and escapes to the subway station. However, Mayuri is killed once again when Yugo's daughter, Nae, accidentally pushes her into the path of an oncoming train. Devastated, Rintaro vows to keep leaping to the past until he manages to save Mayuri. So yeah, it's in this episode that we get into like the, I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen the butterfly effect, but like we get into kind of like a kind of a paradox, or we get into a situation where time keeps forcing things to go the same way over and over again.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. They kind of allude to it before when Akihabara shifted, and after it's like they ended up Akihabara became just a normal town and not the mecca of Moe, and so they're like, well, even though things changed, we still ended up all being friends in the end, and so it seems like no matter what he's doing, she's destined. Mayuri's destined to die. The It's like a bad version of Groundhog's Day, essentially. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting to see, and then you are getting drawn into the desperation and panic and trying to figure out, what can be done, or trying to figure out the rules of this are. So it's kind of neat that way. The other thing is in the beginning of the episode, it's well slash the end of the previous episode, Suzuha, when she bursts in and she lets them know that she takes out the entire company of bad guys, and has the heroic pose with her facing down with Moeka. You end up seeing Kurisu getting a shot as well at the very end, right before the first time leap. So it's slowly, Rintaro's building up a lot of uh, depression slash psycho like wear and tear, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of
Psychological wear and tear.
it's funny because he's, and like I said, obviously seeing his friend die multiple times again and again, and he's never been a stable person to begin with. So on certain point, you're like, all right, later on, I'm bringing this up now because some of the mannerisms, you're like, well, why would like being of clear mind, as like you're like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. Why would we do that? Well, like, yeah, but you got to realize he's literally groundhogging him day after day in a spiral of of just darkness, and he's not necessarily thinking the most clearly. So later on,
Well,
some of his actions
he's having
are
to
questionable.
relive the worst day of his life, essentially, like over and over and over again, in order to try to solve it. But he's still taking that hit, from having to do that.
And failing. That's the thing, is
Right.
the double is like no matter what, and then going like no matter what I do, I'm still going to fail, and so that's that's a lot. There's a lot there to be to be unpacked, but yeah, this one, it shows Mayuri in the most worst Groundhog Day remake imaginable. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for this episode then, right?
Yeah, I think so. All right, episode 14, physically necrosis. As each of Rintaro's attempts to save Mayuri keep failing, he learns from Moeka that the lab was targeted by CERN due to their creation of a time machine and their plan to publicly announce it. Falling into despair over his repeated failures, Rintaro is approached by Kurisu, who gets him to reveal his situation and gives him key trigger phrases to get her past self to cooperate with him. just uh, after being sent to just before the time leap machine's completion, Rintaro manages to obtain Kurisu's aid before they are both approached by Suzuha. She explains that to save Mayuri, they need to escape the Alpha World Line attractor field, where Mayuri is doomed to die due to the converging nature of world lines, and cross the 1% divergence point to the beta world line, where the outcome might be different. Suzuha then takes Rintaro and Kurisu to the crashed satellite, which turns out to be a time machine and reveals she is, in fact, John Teeter and has come back from the year 2036. So, yeah, so in this episode, we start to see um, kind of like there's a lot of things in this show where you're kind of just left for episode after episode being like, well, why are they really telling me that? Like, why are they like why do have they have this Suzuha character? She doesn't really seem to be doing anything. Why do they have this Moeka character? You know, we kind of learned that in the last episode. Doesn't really seem to be doing a whole lot. Mayuri as well, Kurisu. We've got all these characters that that are there. They say things. They have like fake, what I would call maybe red herring storylines behind them, and this is another point where we see like, okay, this is what the real point of this character is. With Suzuha, she is a time traveler, and then we finally get to learn what the heck was going on with that satellite crashing into the building in the first episode. And yeah, so we're finally, things are even more so coming together.
Yeah, so I think it's this episode where, in the beginning when he meets Moeka, Rintaro, like, he gets the drop on her. But if I'm remembering correctly, I thought this is the first time that they mentioned that they're the Rounders. I know that the what the Wikipedia page said when they first bust in, but I'm pretty sure they don't really say anything. And they mention, but he asks, you know, who do you work for? She says, and that's when she refers to the company that comes into play later, Arc something, and then he's like, no, the real company, and she met, you know, it's like, do you work for CERN? And then she said she's a rounder. At least that's the first time I remember them saying it, and
I think that's right. I think they
uh,
just the Wikipedia was just like that's what they're called, but they didn't have
yeah,
time to talk about it in the episode until now.
yeah. So that's exactly, and yeah, the big reveal that Suzuha is the time traveler, which then starts fitting into place all the things that was strange about her from before. The fact that she had never seen fireworks, and she was super excited about the fireworks festival.
Mm.
Um, the fact that at one point they have corn, and she's like, "Oh, this is what it looks like. Like it looks like little blisters, you know." And they're like, "Have you not seen corn before?" You know, it's like all these really weird mannerisms showing up when he's like, "Yeah, maybe I've been brainwashed." And then she just jumps on Rintaro and looks in his eyes and be like, "Okay, you haven't been chipped." You know, like
Mm.
she has so many weird mannerisms, and you're like, "Okay, this all kind of makes sense." Um,
It was
and yeah,
it was in this episode where she shows them the time machine satellite thing, and then I like put together. I was like, wait a second. She was like really concerned about her dad, like something about backstory about wanting to go find her dad or whatever. And it was at this point where I was like, wait, are Kurisu and Okabe her mother and father? But we find out that's not the case. But that is kind of where I was at this point. I was like, his hair's black, her hair's red. I guess it could make brown hair. I was just kind of like doing
well,
the crazy
there's a
board
lot there.
yarn.
You're like, okay, like is she like at the time, you know, like at the time beforehand talking about looking for a father? You're like, oh, maybe it's John Teeter. You know, like maybe that's the father.
Mm,
You know,
that'd be a good guess.
because
Yeah.
she was trying to meet up. She was going to go to the meeting that that Itaru his nickname starts with a D. Daru.
Totally.
Daru
Yeah.
is going to go to that same meeting, and you're like, oh yeah, where Teeter, but Teeter never showed up, and so you're like, okay, you know, so that's. But then when you realize, oh wait, she is Teeter, like, oh, okay, never mind. Uh, but then like it does kind of correlate to when she showed up, when he noticed the posts coming back again, being like, oh, now she's pretending to, or now Teeter's pretending to be Japanese. You're like, all right, um, so that it's kind of it's a lot of fallen pieces, but it's really hard to remember, especially if you're depending on how much you're watching at a single time. If you're watching this as a slow burn, then I couldn't imagine having watched this like week after week and then trying to keep all the threads going. It helps to really. This is one of those shows that does help to binge. Like it really does. So
Yeah, I mean, the only benefit to watching this week to week would be rewatching it. If you're watching it live, then that's pretty much it. I guess you'd in 2011. There are probably ways to go get it again, whatever. But being able to rewatch an episode maybe at least twice would really help to cement what is going on and like what they're talking about. But to your point, watching it week to week would be pretty hard because it is. I mean, it was hard enough for me to follow some of the stuff that was going on, and I was watching it. I was just binging it episode after episode. So, yeah, you got a point there.
all right, about next episode then, right?
Okay, episode 15: Missing Link Necrosis. Suzuha explains how CERN was able to build a time machine and use it to create a totalitarian world in 2036, stating that she had originally planned to travel to 1975 to acquire an IBM 5100, but made a detour to the year 2010 to look for her father. When she tries to start the time machine, she discovers it has broken down, which Rintaro realizes was a result of the storm on the night he stopped her from leaving. Leaping 2 days before the completion of the time leap machine. Rintaro gathers the lab members to inform them of the situation. While Daru is tasked with fixing Suzuha's time machine, Mayuri suggests that everyone also help Suzuha find her father, using a pin badge he gave her as a clue. Suzuha also gives Rintaro a device called the divergence meter, which keeps track of the magnitude of differences between world lines, and tells him about how he founded the resistance against CERN in the future. After spending the day searching for Suzuha's father, Rintaro is thanked by Suzuha before receiving a lead on Suzuha's father from a badge maker.
Yeah, so this when they came out with the remake not that long ago, there was a special edition of it which came with the badge and a metal Oompa
Nice.
figurine. And I remember being like, "Man, I kind of want to pull the trigger on this dumb tchotchke stuff, but I'm not going to."
If it was a real metal Oompa, it'd almost be worth it, probably. Um, yeah, it's somewhere along the line, I kind of was like, so it's just funny that they made the real world CERN. They basically turned them into like this secretive Illuminati evil organization that's going to take over the world. I was just kind of like just thinking about the real world CERN. That's just kind of a funny sort of idea to have, but they managed to do it. Yeah, this episode I liked quite a bit because the guy that's selling pens in the alley. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this needs to be submitted on Is It Racist? Because it was a little bit the the acting and the things that were going on there were very strange, but they managed to pull it off pretty well, I guess. And at the end, I was like, I bet this guy's going to be important to what's going on here because he just kind of had a little bit too much presence in the episode. But they ended up coming back to him, and he isn't able to give a lead. We find out it is revealed at that point. I think it's revealed at that point, right? Am I
Next episode.
okay? Next episode, so I'll wait. I'll wait to say more.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, the term or the phrase, the sense of yeah, I don't speak jive
Yeah,
in
that's what it's
English. Yeah.
culminated into. The character, I don't even remember the guy's name, but that character selling the pins,
He's just street vendor. He's just
he's
known as, I think he's
street
just labeled
vendor.
as street vendor.
He sidestepped that very awkward situation pretty deftly, so I got to give him props for that.
Yeah, it's funny. And then, while that was happening, Kurisu's just like, I can't believe you said word to your mother.
Yeah, yeah, the dub is great for that. The dub is
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah, it's, anyways, it's a funny scene. And the, yeah, there's a lot. There's just, I think in this one as well, as Jetter's going ahead and repairing the time machine, he's talking to Suzuha, and then that's when Mayuri's like, you know, like, don't they look like something like don't they like look good together or something like that? And it's just they start, they kind of give a little bit of a nod to like them uh being well matched is the best way to put it. Um and it's just one of those things that the also later on it talks about like Mayuri looking at the bigger picture, that whole concept of she sees more than most. So that kind of is a constant theme throughout the series.
Yeah, she's sort of a simple person that doesn't really know or care all that much about all the weird sciencey stuff that they're doing. She kind of just wants to. She has an innocence about her where she wants to just everybody be friends and have a good time and stuff like that. But at the same time, she kind of has an intuition that comes from her childlike wonder, I guess, that actually gives answers that other people cannot see. So I think that's pretty interesting, and it makes her character like, okay, this is what you're actually for. This is what you're used for. How you're useful in the story.
Hmm. All right. Yeah, let's go ahead with the next episode.
All right, episode 16, Sacrificial Necrosis. Unable to get much information about the badge maker's client, Rintaro decides to leap back in time to confront the client in question, only to find it was Daru, who wanted to make a fake badge to cheer Suzuha up. Daru then reveals that Suzuha's time machine is only able to travel backward in time, meaning they won't be able to see her again once she leaves. As the repairs to the time machine are completed, Mayuri deduces from the time machine's name that Suzuha's father is actually Daru. After a short reunion, Suzuha travels back to 1975, though Rintaro notices the divergence meter's reading has not changed. A few hours later, Yugo delivers a letter written by Suzuha in the year 2000, revealing that she had committed suicide a year later. In the letter, Suzuha laments that she had failed her mission as the damages to the time machine caused her to crash and lose her memories for 24 years. Blaming himself for stopping Suzuha on the night of the storm that damaged the time machine, Rintaro sends a D-mail that stops him from following Suzuha, letting her use the time machine before it was damaged, but making her forget meeting her father. Speaking with Yugo again in the New World line, Rintaro learns that Suzuha had died of illness instead and receives her divergence meter, which is now showing a different value. So yeah, this is kind of what we were talking about. I just wanted to go back to this part here. Mayuri deduces from the time machine's name that Suzuha's father is actually Daru. So this is kind of cool because it's a really weirdly named time machine that seems to just kind of be like a spread of like some kind of serial numbers and stuff like that would make sense to the person who made it, at least make logical sense to the person who made it. But they show you through some other things in the show the way that Daru names things is to make it seem like they are there's a serial number in a series of things when in actuality it's just a one-off. It's literally the first named thing. So they show you that, and then they show you this, and they go, look, it's named in this like way that you would think makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, but it makes a Daru kind of sense. And so therefore, and like Mayuri's the only one to notice that, which is pretty cool. And that's where we go, oh, there you go. Yeah.
She also previously mentions in the towards the end of the last episode where the pin vendor talks about the person who
Oh yeah.
wanted to make the commission. He's a big guy, you know, and it's just like they talk about how he's round and essentially like a barrel. And that's when Mayuri's like, well, barrel is like Taru being, it's like barrel. And then she mentions like she does a couple of references, and later on, it's revealed that his handle, uh, that his handle is barrel teeter.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it all kind of culminates together. But anyways, that's kind of the
She's using some very point and click adventure game logic, but she gets there. Yeah.
but also it's because she's like removed from everything that she just she thinks in her own like abstract kind of way. She sees the world in a different light. She doesn't, she admits that the sciencey stuff goes over her head. She doesn't quite question a lot of the things that she just like as they come. She just kind of deals with things, and that plays with her later on as well. So yeah, this episode actually did quite a bit. They the whole letting her go back in time, and then having the time machine still be like not fully fixed,
Yeah.
and then having Suzuha live for like 24 years in like blissful ignorance of not what her mission was. So she lived a full life until she didn't.
Yeah.
It's just like and that's it was like pretty traumatic how that message gets put across. She ends up having helped like her whole connection to what was it Mr. Braun, which is Yugo, and it's just like yeah, it's kind of everyone's connected, and then they it's like then having to go through and be like okay, well, I'm never gonna stop you to begin with, which means that everything from then there on after like doesn't exist anymore except for within our main protagonist. So it is this is one thing, the unraveling essentially starts really, because this is one of the first things we undo in the divergence meter.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Are you ready to go 17?
Yep.
Okay. Episode 17, Made in Complex. Despite the change in divergence, Mayuri's death still takes place, albeit a day later than in the previous world line. Kurisu theorizes that since negating Rintaro's D-mail, stopping Suzuha delayed the attack, undoing the effects of the other D-mails could bring them back to a world line where they have an IBN 5100, allowing them to hack into CERN and delete the records that set them on their trail. Rintaro starts by trying to figure out how to reverse Ferris's D-mail. After helping her evade a rival gang of Rynet players, Rintaro takes Ferris to the place where her maid cafe used to be and tells her about the way Akihabara was. This causes Ferris to recall some of her memories from that world line and the D-mail she sent, a fake ransom note, which prevented her father from boarding a plane fated to crash. The rival gang catches up to them, but they are rescued by the arrival of Ferris's father. Speaking to him, Rintaro learns that he was forced to sell the IBN 5100 he had to pay for the he was forced to sell the IBN 5100 he had to pay for the fake kidnapping's ransom. After accepting the reality of her father's death, Ferris agrees to send a D-mail canceling out her previous one, turning Akihabara back into a Moe hub. The IBN 5100, however, remains out of Rintaro's reach. Okay, so for this one, so I think this is the first episode, at least it's probably the first episode where it actually matters, but this is the first episode where they tell us that some of the people, or really maybe even all of the people involved in this, do have some kind of a shadow of a memory of the previous world lines. So obviously Okabe is is like the one who can remember everything. That's like his superpower. Is like he's the one who can remember everything across all the world lines because he is like the box with himself. But it's in this episode, I'm pretty sure that they change world lines, and Ferris says kind of remembers she kind of remembers stuff from the past. And the reason I point that out is because, well, they do, but it's really the only way that it can make sense for her to agree to send a text message that is basically going to get her father killed, essentially, because that's like the true world line. And so in her heart of hearts, she knows that like that is like the way that it's like supposed to be. And she knows that she got to have a full life more or less with her dad being around, and that when the world lines shift back into the way they're supposed to be, that part of her will still probably have what the non the non true world lines. She's probably still gonna have some of that. Like that's like my head canon a little bit in there, but that was the only way that I could make it make sense. Because I was like, why would she ever want to do that? But if you think that she has some kind of like, well, this is not really right, and I do remember what is right, then it kind of makes sense.
So, yeah, all right, so what happens is when he does show her, um, the Akaba that she like her old location, he refers to the things that she thought of, um, mentions the cafe name, talks, and then she's like, "How did you know that? Only my father knew that." And then he shows her the physical location. She's getting flashbacks of the other timeline, and through them talking and discussing, she's starting to remember, and then recalling her experiences, and also realizing that she's besties with Mayuri plus in both timelines. So knowing but the big ask is he's saying don't send the fake ransom note that you sent because she essentially killed her dad. That's the guilt she lives with day in day out. Is
Yeah.
she sent a fake ransom note because she was upset because the dad promised to come visit her or spend time with her on her birthday. He had a business trip to get to. She sends a fake ransom note, which then makes him fly back to the states, um, and that's where he dies in a plane crash. So she has lived with that guilt the entire time, and this current timeline now has guilt free. The reason why she didn't make the maid cafe is because her dad wouldn't let her, and uh, and then the IBN 5100 exists, and was that whole bit is because she was legitimately kidnapped, needed an actual ransom, which then you find out that it's because of Suzuha as an adult who had successfully time traveled to the 70 to 75. She offers a bunch of money for it, the money that is needed for Ferris to be rescued. So that's kind of the everything coming full circle, as it were. And now she does remember her previous world. Ferris remembers the previous timeline, and eventually is willing to go back to the way it's supposed to be in order to help because she is very much in love with Okabe, and also wants Mayuri to not die because of her,
Mhm.
because that's essentially what's happening. So that's why she is willing to accept the fate, and you know that's kind of they allude to kind of like her emotions with Okabe, and trying to be like, well, hopefully at least I'll be real, like able to remember our time together in this moment as well. um, so yeah, there's a lot to this episode. The first really heavy decision being made, a true like a sacrifice that has resulted from the D-mails, and uh, I think that's really it about this episode that I can mention as well. So
Yeah, I think the only other thing would be like this is where, at least in my mind, I was like, okay, so we're gonna run it back now. Like we did like the first part of the season was kind of these like red herring things where we're helping people out with the power of this like time travel machine or whatever, sending texts in the past to affect the future. And now that we've done that, and now we're gonna have to undo those things to get back to the way things are kind of supposed to be. But yeah, all right. So let's keep going. Episode 18, Fractal Androgynous. Rintaro tells Luca about how she used to be a. This says Luca. I think it's should be Ruka.
it's there's a lot of translation errors or arguments between the fan base based off of Funimation versus original game. Some and being
So
in
okay.
this case an L and an R.
So
So
the great L and the R debate. I guess we can talk about this for just a second. So I did not hear this from the director of the Japanese department, who was a very Japanese human being, like extremely Japanese person. But the director of the Japanese department at my college, somebody asked him what it's closer to, L or R, and he said it's closer to the English, or at least Americanized English L sound. That is what I believe he said at that time. Everything else, in my experience of having lived in Japan for 2 years, and everything I've ever heard in Japanese, makes me think that it is technically, in my mind, closer to R. But if you're going to make the sound correctly, where you put your tongue between L and R, it is actually right in between that. So it's really neither, but I think that L is just too far. La is just too far from it as opposed to Ra. And that's just me, but people, I guess we're just going to always argue about it
well,
forever.
so the thing is there is a Japanese person in Japan, and so Ruka would be the R sound would make more sense than Luca. If you're having a Westerner
Yeah.
in Japan, then I would say okay, it's more of an L because that can be perceived as more of a common name. Uh, but once again, it's like it depends on the word or who you're talking about when it comes to names for sure.
Well,
But like love is still rabu, like
yeah.
it's like they don't have the V either. So it's just like
Well,
but
here's a bit of hypocrisy. Rintaro tells Luca, no, it can't. It's got to be one or the other. Both of those names have to start with the same sound. Like,
well, Rentaro is a family name, and that's the thing is so the thing is it's both because it's they just don't have the L's and so the way I look at it is it depends on the source word. And in this case, Rintaro is a Japanese person, and plus anything Taro is 1000% Japanese.
but like Ruka is just part of her name. Her like name is like Rukako or whatever.
And she's Japanese, so therefore I see it as an R. I do not see it as an L. I
So
think
what I'm trying to say is that if you're gonna go with L, okay, but you can't say Rintaro and Luca. You have to say Lintaro and Luca or Rintaro and Ruka. I mean that's where I stand with it. So, but anyway,
once again, it depends on the word, depends on the situation. But in this case, they're both Japanese people with Japanese names, so I would say it's an R sound. But if you have a different scenario, different person, different name that starts similar, but I can see it being an L. So,
I mean,
anyways,
I know it would
yeah.
never stick, but I really want to like go through and edit all of this on this Wikipedia page and just make it R for Ruka. Okay, whatever. Sorry. Restarting this episode 18, Fractal Androgynous. Rintaro tells Ruka about how she used to be a male and urges her to reverse the D-male responsible to change Mayuri's fate. While she initially doesn't believe him, she later agrees to do so on the condition that Rintaro takes her on a date. Despite Kurisu and Daru's advice on dating, Rintaro and Ruka spend their date together in an awkward conversation. Like Ferris, Ruka eventually recalls the previous world line where she was a male, distressing her as a return to it would prevent her from pursuing her feelings with Rintaro. Before sending the D-mail that would negate Ruka's first one, Rintaro realizes that the reason they did not enjoy their date was that he was trying to be someone he was not. As a result, Rintaro returns to the shrine and spends the rest of the day training with Ruka like they used to. With the relationship repaired, Rintaro sends the D-mail, moving back to a world line where Ruka is a boy, leaving the next D-mail to be reversed. Moeka's.
Yep. So this is also another like, all right, this is a heavy decision, heavy change that's been made for a personal character in the series. Um, it's just like the whole dating aspect was pretty funny. Having Daru and uh, Kurisu being like yelling at him and trying to give it dating advice, or Kurisu reading from a manual essentially of what to do and not to do. The awkward conversation Okabe has with Ruka being like, and him being like, I gotta throw this conversation back, and then he does it, and then they're like, he threw it, and then he goes, and then like he spiked it to the ground or something like that, like
Yeah, because he says something really weird that made
he's like,
no
oh, it's like,
sense.
yeah, like today or something. The day is also the anniversary of whatever patent in Japan, and it's just
Right.
like,
Just the most non sequitur, completely like you do not understand. Like you cannot paint by numbers your date conversations. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work that way.
yeah, it's just no, it's funny. And, once again, it's them moving along. Though the thing it does mention is at the end, of course, gives him a kiss. The and fully expressing their feelings towards Okabe, which um, once again, them now, your hope at this point is these people are now giving up everything, one after another. Hopefully, they'll still remember these in the main timeline again. So, making that everyone has the at least a little bit of an ability for the reading Steiner, as Okabe calls it. So,
Hmm. Okay. All right. I think we can go on then. Episode 19, Endless Apoptosis. Arriving at Moeka's apartment only to learn that she committed suicide, Rintaro leaps to an earlier time, finding Moeka to be a nervous wreck due to not having been contacted by a person known as FB, who had given her the orders to find the IBN 5100. Rintaro steals Moeka's phone and sends a D-mail from it, but discovers that she had lied about the contents of the message she had sent in the previous world line. Confronting Moeka about FB and telling her about her future suicide, Rintaro finds the offending text, which involved the location of the IBN 5100, but annulling it via another D-mail still does not change the world line. As Okabe realizes he needs to send a D-mail from FB's phone to convince her past self to follow its instructions, Moeka, feeling betrayed by FB for not contacting her, tells him where to find the IBN 5100. I just want to point out that I think it's in this episode. Yeah, it's got to be in this episode. Doesn't matter too much anyway. But in this episode, the screaming that the voice actress for Moeka does is pretty wild. Like, she really goes hard on the screaming, so much that it's almost a little bit distracting. It's almost like it's a little too real. Because she is like screaming her head off, and I'm like, man, you go, girl. Like you like you get those union dues. Like this is very I just know that they have to do multiple takes sometimes, and it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, they really need protections, because you could I just am amazed at how hard she went. So anyway, that aside,
it offsets the fact that she's like stone cold whisper quiet the rest of the time.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, she is very much just like just kind of whisper quiet like you said. So it is a very sharp contrast there. But yeah, when he goes there and finds when Ocarine goes there and finds that she's committed suicide, it's like, whoa, like what's going on here? And then it's like, okay, they're gonna get this kind of under control, figure out what's going on, go back in time, get the phone. Okay, we're gonna fix it with the same way we always fix it. Wait, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And kind of them having to go through, oh, so you've got to make FB say it. I was like, oh, okay. So the plot thickens because like once they couldn't get it to work the old way, I was like, well, how are they going to do it then? But they had to figure out the true source.
Yeah, it does make sense that way. The fact that she wouldn't believe a message coming from herself, as it were. Especially after, but the I thought it was obvious the original text when I remember watching this originally being like, yeah, like the moment he whispers or she asks, where did you find the IBN? And he tells her from the shrine. And then shortly after that, she's like, can I send the text? And she's makes uh the story about, yeah, my phone. I want my phone to be changed. And I'm like, but then also next thing you know, the IBN's gone. I'm like, come on, doesn't take that much effort to figure out what one and one equals two, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
so to find out what her original message was the location of the IBN. I was like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. But this was one of those it does do a two-parter on this one, so I'll let you continue in the next episode.
Okay, episode 20, finalize apoptosis. Despite Okabe knowing the location of the IBN 5100, Kurisu advises against trying to steal it, instead suggesting that he stake out the location to find FB, with Moeka deciding to join him. As they observe the IBN 5100 being taken out, they follow it as it is passed along to several people, including Yugo, before it ends up on a plane bound for France, where CERN is located. Rintaro, Moeka, and Kurisu go to confront Yugo, who reveals himself to be FB, and a rounder who was forced to do CERN's bidding to prevent harm from befalling Nye. Following the code of the rounders for those who fail their mission, Yugo kills Moeka before taking his own life. Rintaro then uses Yugo's cell phone to finally cancel out Moeka's D-mail, returning to a world line where both Moeka and Yugo are alive, and the IBN 5100 is once again in their possession at the Future Gadget Lab. As Rintaro gets Daru to hack into the CERN network to erase the data they have on them, he comes to the sudden realization that by doing so, he would have to return to a world line where Kurisu is dead. Okay, so that is, this is kind of like where we find out the true, the truth behind Mr. Braun and the true identity of Mr. Braun and what he's really in the story for. So yeah, he ends up being an agent for CERN, and I forget what FB actually stands for. They say what it is, but like, don't they, like, it's like Ferdinand Braun, isn't that?
Yeah, it's the inventor of the tube television.
Of course, yes, that was it.
So that's the
CRT,
FB was supposed to, the CRT. So it's the Ferdinand Braun, Braun, opposed to, if you just hearing Braun thinking he's talking about a muscle bound guy, because Yugo is pretty jacked, so you have to be in order to carry a CRT.
Yeah. I mean, God, I have two CRTs in here, and every time I have to move it, they're not even that big, and they're just like, it's just like insane having to move one of those things. But yeah, this is another point where the show kind of like has a double use. It's like, you thought we were talking about BRAUN, BRAWN, or yeah, WN, but we're talking about BRAUN. And you're like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. So, yeah. But I guess so. He had to take his own life because he also failed his mission. Is that
Well, so that description is not correct. So or at least I don't think it's correct because it's not that fact that she outlived her usefulness and
right?
or she completed her mission, and so it's just tying up loose ends. You kill the patsy, you have no trace back to him. So, and that's half the reason why you find out that so one of the things is you're led to believe that FB is a woman because that's exactly what Moika thinks. Moika feels like this person is very maternal, who's been sent because she was someone who's lost on the verge of suicide and decides to get some random message from somebody, being saying, "Hey, work for me," and then gives a lot of affirming, like texts saying that they're needed, that they're useful, like giving them purpose. And that's why when the question comes up where Okabe says, would you kill for FB? And then it's like if FB asks, yes, like because that in in her world, FB is everything, is the mother figure that she needs, that she wants.
Mhm.
And you find out that Yugo is really Mr. Is FB, but it plays the role of anyone that's necessary. So throughout all the members, plays a figure of one sort or another, adapts their messages, does it via text, so therefore it doesn't break that illusion. Um, and also at the same time, disassociation, making it a lot easier to cut ties. It's kind of a reflection of the social media as a whole, like
Mhm.
being behind the message board, not, being able to say and do things with the anonymity, and also not having to concern yourself with like the real world bullying kind of situation. But in this case, um, when when their agents outlive their usefulness, they just cut ties cold turkey, and uh, usually then driven to despair, their agents just disappear. But because they're lonely individuals that don't have a big social group, no one looks for them, and therefore it makes it a lot cleaner overall for them to cover their tracks. It's very dark, very depressing.
Yeah, and I think something that occurred to me when I was watching this episode is that it doesn't. This is a place where it's kind of hard to translate what they're really trying to say here. In in English, you really wouldn't assume whether or not someone is male or female in writing via text. There's ways that you could kind of figure that out after enough texting. But it's not really something that you would assume. You would generally be like, well, I got to come right out and ask you, you know, your gender if you haven't said something that already kind of proved that. So, but I think in Japanese, while Japanese isn't necessarily gendered like in the structure of the language, um, the way that it's used often is. So I think that's probably why it would be like a very much more obvious thing to a Japanese audience, which is who this is for. Well, yeah, you can tell some if someone is, you know, is male or female, at least in terms of like the way they want to come across by the way that they talk and the way that they write, because there's certain language that men tend to use. There's certain language and grammar that women tend to use that so you'd be able to tell very easily. So when I was watching this, I was like, that's kind of weird. I was like, oh yeah, in Japanese it probably is a lot more straightforward to what they're trying to get across here.
Yeah,
But
and so when it comes to Braun, he essentially Monica is a loose end at the end. They have no more need for her because she fulfilled her duty with the IBN. But also she kind of is now betraying them, outing who he was. So he ties up that loose end with her. Mr. Braun now being discovered, his identity being blown, kind of can no longer protect his child because because he doesn't know to what extent his identity has been compromised.
Right.
Um, and the only way to escape the organization, as it were, or CERN slash the Rounders, um, is to to kill himself because what happens is if he tried to leave with his daughter, they'd just hunt them both down. And so it gets really heavy really quickly. But also at the same time, he looks at it as like a business transaction. He's taking care of the extras are not necessarily part of his organization, nor was it part of his mission. He wasn't given the orders to kill Okabe or Kurisu at the time or anything like that. So they're like, yeah, it's fine. We're gonna go ahead, and he just is matter of fact about it and leaving his daughter behind. But it's for her own benefit in his mind, so that's why he does it instead of trying to voice that or like and try to take her away or trying to let her in on it. It's just like, nope, nope. Here's your surprise. Like
Yeah, and
she's so in that timeline, it's kind of messed up.
yeah, I guess his logic at that point is like, I can't involve my daughter in this because if she knows, then she'll be a target. But if I just clean up the loose ends and clean up myself as a loose end, then that is her best chance at, within that timeline or whatever. That's her best chance at happiness and being free of it. So it kind of makes sense in a weird way from that aspect. Um, but yeah, so that is where things end up. I was going to say something else, but I think I forgot. So okay, if you don't have anything else, we can go on.
Yeah, let's go to the next episode.
All right, episode 21, Paradox Meltdown. Not wanting to move to a world line where Kurisu dies, Rintaro decides against the hacking. Too afraid to tell Kurisu the reason behind his change of plans, Rintaro accompanies Mayuri to a comic market, trying to think of a way he can save her without sacrificing Kurisu. As a car appears during Mayuri's fated time to die, Rintaro attempts to change destiny by letting the car hit him instead, but Mayuri pushes him out of the way and dies in his place. After he leaps back in time, Kurisu and Rintaro reveal that she dies in the Beta world line. Later, Rintaro finds Mayuri visiting her grandmother's grave, overhearing that she's been having dreams of the times she has died and that she has noticed Okabe's suffering. Meanwhile, Kurisu visits the location where she is destined to die in the Beta world line. So yeah, so here we kind of have a bit of a restart lull episode that sort of is kind of starting to head into the last major arc of the show. And yeah, so we have so kind of have a little bit of a reminder that that no matter what Rintaro wants to do, no matter how kind of close they get to fixing the world line, until it is truly fixed, it will never be right, and Mayuri will die every time. So they establish that again, and also kind of preserve Mayuri's sort of childlike innocence by kind of letting her kind of talk to her grandmother's grave about all of the lives that she has now kind of experienced, more or less, or deaths rather, and kind of move things along in that way, as well as with Kurisu visiting where she is supposed to die in the other world line.
Yeah. So when it happens is this entire time, she's as far as Mayuri is concerned, she's tried to voice wanting to talk to Okabe a number of times, and you can tell that she's had like a concern, but because she comes off as really simple, she just kind of lets it pass. She's like, it's just like kind of like just my imagination. And I guess the way that the memories of the other timelines can be, or the world lines can be considered, it's almost like a deja vu almost effect, right? It's like you think you feel it, but you don't really. But you like in the end, you're like, oh yeah, that's just my imagination. And so the entire time, all the ways she's died, she's just considered that uh, odd. And then every time she then, you know, keeps on seeing Rintaro, you know, acting up more and more, getting more frustrated. And they then also previous episode, she says like, "I feel like it's been a long time since I spoke to him," and she even mentions that to Kurisu, and Kurisu then, you know, brings word to Okabe, and Okabe is like, he kind of just like, yeah, he kind of just kind of pushes it off. But if you think about it, if she's reliving the same time and he's constantly running around and she's looping herself, like she can kind of realize like if she's having those strands of memories, like, yeah, it has been a long time since she actually got to speak with them, because they're not really talking like they used to be. Um, and it kind of goes back to her flashback of how Okabe first, like took her hostage, as it were. I don't remember if they kind of allude to, if they mentioned that exactly in what episode, but essentially it's a way to have her have him save her, but he needs an excuse because he can't outright say it, because he's a guy and he can't understand his emotions because
Mm,
obviously he's emotionally stunted being a chuny and everything. So yeah, it's a unique way to tie everything back, and of course, uh, going back to the original email or the D-mail that was first sent. They do talk about it beforehand, being like, well, the original D-mail was activated because the downstairs TV was on at Mr. Braun's shop, and the first email being that he sent it saying, "Hey, uh, Kurisu, he found Kurisu murdered." And then that's the first jump. So it's like one of those things that if you rewatch the first episode, you're like, yeah, okay, I remember that in that sequence now, but it's kind of
mhm.
hard to remember at this point. Um, 20 plus episodes in, and you're like, yeah, I think I remember the exact moment, but it is a little hard to do that. So, but yeah, also the entire time, Kuris has always been helping him, and then at this point being like, all right, now you're telling me that I'm gonna have to like kick it. So that's why she gets existential and visits the Radio Kaikon building. um, I find it funny because the Radio Kaikon has never been that empty ever in its entirety.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what timeline, like what world line you're in. I feel like that's the thing is this show, just like most anime, any of the street scenes, and anything. So like, man, that road would be busy AF. Very very few main thoroughfares would be empty. Doesn't matter what time of night. And then they go to Comiket, and the same thing is like they just because you can't edit all or you can't have all the people in on your shot because it'd just be too costly. Also, you can't really have a quiet moment of them two talking without a million people around them. Uh, but yeah, they go to Comiket for because that's the comic market as they put it in the description.
Mhm.
But it's the summer Comiket. So yeah, the that's about it for this episode. It's just it's a lot of build up. It does kind of replay because it trades one dilemma for another. Um, so it's just like he was trying to save one person, but now he has to make, the trolley problem, right? You know,
Mm.
who do you pull the switch for? And now he's trying to do his darndest to save them both. But when in the one instance where uh Mayuri does get hit, she at least talks about how she gets to save him and be of help, and it's a really tragic little bit, and you're like, dang man, it's that's really messed up. And you can see why Okabe's like just kind of folding under the pressure.
Right, yeah, he's it's starting to get to him. Okay, ready for 22?
Yep.
All right. Being meltdown. Carissa reveals to Rintaro that she recalls her stabbing from dreams, as well as Rintaro's various attempts at saving Mayuri. When Kurisu tells Rintaro that he should save Mayuri over her, he cannot accept it and runs back to the lab. As Rintaro attempts to time leap again, Kurisu stops him, worried that seeing Mayuri die over and over will destroy him. After giving in and choosing to save Mayuri, Rintaro tells Kurisu he loves her, to which she responds by kissing him. The next day, Kurisu prepares to return to America, while Rintaro and the others delete the original D-mail from the CERN network. Just after erasing the data, Kurisu returns to the lab to tell him that she loves him, but is cut off as Rintaro shifts back to the Beta world line. Sometime after getting rid of the phone wave, Rintaro receives a call from an alternate Suzuha telling him she needs his help to prevent World War III. Okay, yeah,
Right, so
so
that last part, that last sentence is the post-credit scene. It's like one of the only post-credit scenes you get in the series.
right.
Everything else post-credit is the a preview to the next episode. Um, so yeah, I'll let you take this one away from the beginning.
No, yeah, so yeah, we kind of find out that the fate of the world is actually kind of involved here, and that and so that we have to do stuff, or the Rintaro has to do stuff in order to prevent World War III. Um, right. So some of these episodes toward the end here sort of start to run together for me because I was watching a lot of them and there's a lot of flipping back and forth, but this one kind of sticks out because this is sort of where Kurisu and Rintaro sort of admit to each other that they're kind of will they won't they, bickering is really that they love each other. So that's sort of the big part that happens in this episode. But yeah, overall that's kind of where we like end off is like, okay, now we have to figure out how to get, like, we've been able to fix some things, we're getting closer, but we now have to try to make it where we can fix everything, because we not only have Mayuri that may die, but we have Kurisu that we also have to save. Maybe save one without saving the other. Well, we can't allow that. We have to save them both.
Yeah, so at this point though, like I said, the episode really the crux of it is them admitting that they have the love for each other. Because the entire time, you're looking at it like, well, it's kind of a weird dynamic. She is Kurisu's a intellectual person that like it rivals Okabe. Respects her, acknowledges her. She gives him a run for the money, and so in that respect. But then the entire time, you're also like, well, you're kind of confused on a little bit on the fact that Mayuri's there and he's trying so hard to make her live. So you're always wondering, like, does he have a thing for her? But it's just like, no, it's just strictly like sisterly, childhood friend. Uh, so I mean, as far as visual novels go, dating sims go, they have like alternate endings, so you can pick your own path, that kind of thing. I haven't played the visual novel for this, so but I'm pretty sure you could pick any of the girls that would make the most sense in a game like this. So yeah, it is, at least as far as the anime goes, has a canon winner, as it were. If it was your waifu of choice, then congrats. If it's not, you can go ahead and bitterly bite your lip and cry in your tissues. But it's
Just make that dojin. That's
uh,
that's when you are called upon by the universe to make your own canonically correct dojin. So there you go.
and then you can look for Nick on Fiverr to voice said Dojin. All
Uh,
voice parts. We know Nick as a man of a million voices, uh, all of which are a bad Scottish and Irish accent. So but yes, all right then. And then, like I said, that's the big thing is he finally commits, deletes, reverts the decision, like um, condemning Kurisu to die. And then at the post credit scene is, yeah, you get the phone call, and then being like, hey, you got to prevent World War III, which was like, wait a minute. It just literally upped the ante by like up teen amount. Like, CERN was bad and oppressive, but like not global world ending, so.
yeah, it's like CERN is gonna bring about the kind of the end of the world, or if not just the end, then like a lot of people dying. So, yeah. Um, okay. All right, I'm going to move on to episode 23. I really wanted to start reading this episode in a Scottish accent, but I won't. Open the Steins Gate. Suzuha explains that her mission is to prevent Kurisu's death and enter a world line known as Steins Gate, in which World War III never happens. Wanting to save Kurisu, Rintaro travels to the past with Suzuha in her time machine, arriving before Kurisu's death. Witnessing events unfold as they did, Rintaro briefly runs into Kurisu, explaining their prior encounter before hiding in the room where she will be stabbed. There, Kurisu meets with her father, revealed to be Dr. Nakabachi, who attempts to take ownership of her time travel theory for himself. Rintaro attempts to save Kurisu by inadvertently stabs her himself, allowing Nakabachi to escape with her theory to Russia, an event that will lead to a time machine arms race and eventually World War III. As Rintaro falls into despair and refuses Suzuha's offer of a second attempt, Mayuri slaps him, stating that he was never one to give up on someone or something. Suzuha then reveals that Rintaro was intended to fail the first attempt so that the scrambled video message he received on the day of Kurisu's death could be made viewable. This turns out to be a video from his future self explaining that the key to saving Kurisu without changing the events that led him to develop the time machine and causing a paradox is to fool his past self into believing Kurisu has died. So quite a bit happens in this episode. The video that he sends back to himself. I think in that video, like he never turns around, right? Like his
He turns around at the end.
Okay,
he does turn around at the end. So,
yeah, okay, that was it. But yeah, he so his future, badass self sends him a video and kind of tells him what he's got to do in order to fix this whole situation. But yeah, like this whole episode, as it sort of unfolded, it got to a point pretty early on where I was like, oh, Rintaro is the one that stabs her. Like it's definitely going to be like a hoisted by your own petard type of thing, where it's like the paradox of like you're the one, like you started this, so you are the one that does it, so that you're the one that can come back, but to do it and stuff like that. And I was like, oh no, kind of just like holding my face, with one eye open, as I watched all this unfold, because it was a pretty, sad or terrible.
Inevitable. Yeah.
Inevitable.
It's one of those things that you see it. But so with this episode in particular, this is worth rewatching episode 1 again.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of small details that you pick out. And between that and a couple of the other timelines, but one of which is when he runs, so he ends up running into Kurisu again. And then in the first episode, when she first meets him, she freaks out. She's like, "What was that you were talking about before?" And she's like, she comes out all like really hard and heavy, and you're like, it's like he has no clue what she's talking about. Later on, it's like, and then you start remembering things throughout, like, when he first does the first jump, he sends the email out, or he like the you hear a scream, the scream that leads him to the body. Well, that's, you realize, oh, that's when he stabs her, he screams bloody murder essentially, and so his own scream is what calls him there. So it's like, all right, you're finally getting the missing puzzle pieces and everything's interlocking really well, and you're like, all right, this makes a lot more sense. And you realize moments like this is like, okay, this is how far they thought ahead, right?
Right.
They thought ahead at, you started at the end and you worked your way to the beginning, and like, all right, that's actually really well done. And when you can fill in those blanks, it's really good. But so this episode is good. Also, at the very end, when he realizes he's the one who did it, it's all his fault. He's freaking out. And then, yeah, Mayuri, she slaps some sense into him. And then watching their own video, and the video being like, yeah, you had like part of it, the big reveal is that you had to go suffer for this to happen, but it's also uh Suzuha being like, "Yeah, sorry, you had this. This has had a thing that we had to do." But you're realizing this Suzuha is very different from the prior one because just all the little talks, like if she immediately just greets Daru as dad, essentially, or explains to him real quick because she obviously said so over the phone,
Mhm.
and and then talking about, oh wait, this time machine goes forward because the previous one did. And she's like, oh, of course. What's the point? It's just like, and he's like relieved, like, oh, that's at least we thought that far ahead, and things of that nature. It's just she's lived a much more happy life. Maybe not the best. Obviously, World War III still happened, but she's much more whole. So it's just like, um, and then of course, for the second time, daughter being like, "Can you talk to me about my wife?" It's like because that's still a big mystery.
We never
And
find that out, do we? At least not in this
not in the
section.
24 episodes.
Okay,
No, not in the first
that would
24.
be definitely something that
Uh,
they would put in the extra stuff for the second season or whatever.
all right. Yeah, and then yeah, so this one ends exactly as you mentioned. So he's told that he has to go ahead and fool himself into believing what he thinks is real, because if he doesn't, he never sends the original D email that kickstarts his journey, in which he then comes full circle. So he has to go on this quest of pain and suffering, and in order to become the person he is meant to be.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it's happened already, but there's a point where, and it might be in the next episode, so it'll just be a tad early if I'm early. But there's a point at which somebody says something that refers to his old like reading Steiner or one of his like Chunibyo type sayings, and he like says like he has like a breaking point moment where he you can feel him kind of become an adult a little bit, and he says that's all made up, it's all stupid stuff, and like I just wanted to point that scene out as being kind of powerful because it was like, okay, this is the point at which he is like no longer a child. He like has finally felt like the real stakes of what he always had. I think he starts to say like he's like, I'm not a mad scientist, like I'm just a guy or whatever. He says all that stuff is just random crap. And so I like that scene because he's like he's been playing at being a mad scientist. He's always wanted to be, this kind of guy that, all this stuff. And he just has he has he has realized that that is not really that does not really going to work anymore. That he's in it deep now, and he has to grow up and become capable in order to fix these real problems.
So I believe it's in the previous episode where he's talking with Kurisu, and then
Yeah.
the meltdown is in front of her, but he's like, yeah, Hyoin Kyoma, like it's all made up, and that so but you kind of understand that from the previous episodes where when the reason why Mayuri is his hostage, because he when after her grandmother died and she kept on visiting the grave, and he would always follow her and watch her as she stares up in the sky. And then he says, like how he believed like the sky cleared up one day and she was going to be taken away, and so that's when he hugs her and says, like you can't go anywhere. You're my hostage. I'm a mad scientist. And he says it was from like one of their kids' shows. So he just quoted something that the villain said. And so that from that tipping point is where he then decides to become the villain and the mad scientist that he plays. So he is playing the bit that he assigned himself in order to keep Mayuri safe. And once again, it's like it's a weird thing because you're like, you think it's supposed to be romantic love, just confused. But in the end, as you see him develop, it's like no actual romantic feelings, but it's just more of a familial bond.
Right.
And because both, he and Mayuri both like understand within each other, but also they're all accepting of the fact that he is in love with Kurisu. And which is, all great in this in this scene. But yeah, like I said, that act of him growing up, realizing and admitting that all his stuff is just bogus, malarkey, essentially. And uh, yeah, that's the crux of this episode. But yeah, so go ahead and let's get to the final one.
All right. Episode 24, Achievement Point. Picking up a light up sword to use its liquid as a substitute for Kurisu's blood, Rintaro and Suzuha return to the day of Kurisu's death. To prevent a metal Upa toy from ending up with Nakabachi's papers, which previously saved them from being destroyed in a fire on the plane flight, Rintaro obtains it himself first from the toy machine so that Mayuri ends up with a plastic one, which would later make its way to Kurisu and Nakabachi. Finding the liquid in the gadget has dried up, Rintaro provokes Nakabachi into stabbing him, leading Nakabachi to run off in fear with Kurisu's research papers. After knocking Kurisu out with a taser, Rintaro uses his own blood from the stab wound to recreate the scene he originally saw, fooling his past self and sending him on his time-hopping journey. As Rintaro returns to the present, Suzuha gives her thanks before disappearing, as she does not yet exist in the Steins Gate world line. After recovering from his wounds, Rintaro starts giving out badges to the lab members he recruited in other world lines, saving one for Suzuha, who will arrive in their world line in 7 years. Later, while walking in the streets of Akihabara, Rintaro has a chance encounter with Kurisu, who appears to have retained some memories of the other world lines. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to like point out too that like Nakabachi being the being one her Kurisu's father and the professor from the beginning and the villain. I was just like, I just slapped myself in the forehead because I was like, of course they always show you the murder in the first episode. If it's not the first scene, then at least the first episode. And I was like, of course that is why he's in that episode. So anyway, I just enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, so he does, so Rintaro in this episode does the kind of Ocean's 11 type heist, but on himself, to convince himself so that everything would proceed as it needs to in order for things to actually end up bad so they can end up good again. So yeah, very very nice trickeration that this TV show pulls off there.
Yeah, so I meant to mention this sooner, but in the beginning of this, they show the essentially lightsaber that he makes.
Right.
It's one of the gadget numbers, and which they've alluded to a few of the gadgets throughout the series. One of the gadgets being a toy helicopter. Essentially, it's a propeller with a stick on it that you rub two hands together, and then it flies up. Well, they happen to have a camera at the bottom of it, and at one point, Kurisu finds it and
Yeah.
says, like, "Oh yeah, this is actually kind of useful." And he goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't have a gyro on it, so the footage is all dizzying and stuff." He's like, "Wait, that seems like a weird that you didn't fix that, model 2 point something something." And he's just like, "No, that's just daughter's naming convention," and that's
Right.
of course then later followed by the convention of the naming scheme of the time machine, which are like, "Oh wait, so yeah, that makes sense on how he would name it." And like they show the light up sword actually earlier on in one of the timelines where he's acting pensive or something like that. He's up on the roof, and Mayuri comes up to the top, and she comes up with that. He's like, "Why don't you just use a flashlight?" She's like, "I couldn't find one, and this is the first thing I found." you know. So it's like, oh, they of all things they bring that to the end of the series. It's like, okay, it's kind of fun. And yeah, also the the fact that you realize that Dr. Nakabashi, no, Nakabachi, he has when he talks about the panel at the Radio Kaikon building, the what he brings up is a lot of Teeter's theories, right?
Hmm.
So he's just like, you're just rehashing all this stuff, and then that's what one of the things Okabe, like it slanders him about. And then and if he follows the same MO where he pretty much is like he reads his own daughter's time machine theory, and then goes, "Wait a minute," and then he just immediately tries to steal it for himself. So that's just kind of how he is he's just a hack who tries to take credit for other people's things. You realize what a terrible, person he is through and through. Um, the yeah,
It's kind
go
of
on.
it's kind of weird that like that Carisu's father is just so deranged, just like completely like out of his mind that he would just like step over his daughter's like dead body to take to take like the scientific papers and stuff. He's just like a complete madman.
Well, apparently he was already planning on defecting. So that was
Yeah,
the thing is like he was already planning on defecting, and then he was just going to have that, and that's essentially what those papers are what start the arms race, which is
right.
kind of funny because I I was thinking about that. I'm like, well, why doesn't during the entire thing, you're looking at it, you're like, well, Kurisu never mentions anything about her personal time machine, the thesis, the entire time of the series.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but she is, but part of the reason why
Also,
she's so enthralled because when she sees the time machine happen, and that's why she's already halfway there, but like, oh wait, these guys are on a different path. They're looking at it from this angle. Then she fully commits to herself to that, and so
yeah.
the idea of her being assistant, makes perfect sense in that respect. Um,
Right. Does she ever say? I can't remember what her last name is. Is there a reason why her last name isn't revealed or
uh,
whatever?
no, it's Makise. It's Kurisu
Why
Makise. So
don't her and her dad
She
have the
probably
same
took
last name?
she probably took, um, Nakabachi.
Yeah,
So they chances are parents divorced and she probably took her mom's last name.
she took
Or
her mom's
she as
last
she
name.
went up the academic career, she probably chose out of the fact that her and her father had a rift in their,
Yeah,
because, one of the things she says is like her father calls her a bitch and like, yeah, hates her. So chances are as she climbed, as she was published at 18, right? So
yeah.
that's more than likely the case, is she just went off, probably chose her mother's name, which isn't very uncommon in Japan for, husbands to give up the last names. Um,
Okay.
I knew a few, yeah, I knew a handful of expats that also, took on, the men who took on their, Japanese wives' last names.
Hmm.
So, it most definitely helps for an expat for documents.
Yeah,
Um
that'd be a little easier. You gotta admit, writing in katakana all the time. It's kind of old.
But yeah, so anyways, yeah, so that is one thing is that you aren't led to believe anything. There wasn't like oh, you should have known by their last name that that Kurisu and Nakabachi were connected.
Hmm.
Um, so it's nothing like that. But yes, and now I do like the fact that he's just like he doesn't check. He's like, he has a theory. He doesn't do any prep work. And he's just like, lightsaber, pull out. I have fake blood in here. And then he's like, he looks at it. He's like, and then of course he curses himself. He's like, of course it would have like, any liquid,
Coagulated.
would have, yeah, it's just like, so he starts hating on that. And, but you do have to admit it takes a lot of guts to rip open your own gut wound that
Pun
much more.
intended.
Yeah. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh man, it's just like, ooh, you kind of feel like Quince like just wince at the own when he very moment he does that, and uh, luckily he gets patched up easy enough, but
Oh.
still, it's just like,
Yeah, so they managed to close everything up and return everything back to the way that it's supposed to be, and
oh,
then
but his scream now has a completely different meaning because the last time he screamed, it was out of agony for stabbing Kurisu, and then this time it's a scream of pure pain from just from making himself bleed out. So, but
exactly,
still canon.
but
Yeah.
still canon. I wanted to look back at the end of the show really quick. So yeah, this is where so the very end things are kind of put back in order the way that they should be, but but Kurisu and Okabe don't actually know each other in this timeline, right?
No, so the interaction they had was literally the interaction they had when they bumped into each other at the Radio Kycon building. It was so it played out the exact same of like, hey, it's kind of a weird experience. Like he freaks out, tries to touch her, she drops her papers. Um, she winds up in a knocked out in a pool of blood,
Mhm.
and then it's just like that's kind of her sequence of events.
Yeah.
Plus, at the very end, you learn that Moeka joins instead of so because Suzuha is no longer in the timeline, Moeka then becomes the part timer at Yugo's CRT shop, uh, and technically Moeka still M4 and Yugo still FB because there's
Yeah.
no reason why they wouldn't still be working for the organization looking for the IBN 5100. Um, so it's like they're still in existence, but then at the same time, Rintaro and gives her a badge to become to become a member of their lab, which then fulfills her need to have to belong to a group or have
Right.
a sense of belonging because she has no sense of belonging. That's why she attaches herself so hard to FB, but then kind of weaning her off that, uh, essentially that one singular person. But though FB would still be in her life, and yeah, that's kind of the big twist is like, him handing out the pins, kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. Now everyone does have a pin, so therefore, in the future, Suzuha would have one to go back when she needed it in a sense. Um, but yeah, it was a nice little touch that did it all around, and and then at the very end, yeah, exactly, just happening uh, to address Suzuha being like, as she's going through the timeline, she's like, "Let me thank you now because I won't be able to go through." She hints that she does the hint at the 7 year. I'll see you in 7 years
Mhm.
because that's when she's going to be born. Um, and essentially, when in the streets of Akiba, when Rintaro ends up meeting Kurisu, she kind of and then I think what's that? She snaps at him and says like about the being the assistant, and obviously being like, well, that conversation never would have happened. So why did she say something that that was a common catchphrase for her
Mm.
that wasn't ever like she would never had a reason to say anything like that. So it's really weird, and so it kind of hints to the fact that she's retaining her memories, at least somewhat. Um, yeah.
And that they
Uh,
can grow from there.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's to hopefully the depressing part is it's like it'll be one-sided infatuation, so he's gonna have to work from scratch to try to work her up, unless depending on how much she remembers.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, though I believe in one of the previous timelines, also Ferris makes a reference to his moves or something like that, having skills or something like that. I think
Okay.
it's um I think I believe that's in this, and then but also at the same time, and then when she does, when Kurisu does kiss him, he's like, "What makes you think that was my first kiss?" Because technically it wasn't, because if he had, thanks to the alternate time,
Yeah.
world threat, it's like, so it's like, yeah, he has, for sure, you know, on screen we knew that he kissed Ruka, and I'm like, chances are because of what was said, I'm like, he's probably like, and that's where you go down your Dojin theories,
Mm.
each ending, right? But it's like, hey, they're not gonna remember anyway, so he's gonna have his memories with each gal, as it were. Uh, but yeah, anyways, it ends pretty solid, with at least an upbeat ending, and this was followed by a 25th episode, an OVA, that we'll talk about, some other time in the future. Uh, but that was done, like this series ended in like September of 2011, and so the OVA ended up coming out February, probably with the release of the DVDs,
Mhm.
um, which is usually the case. Uh, there is following things as well, but all that is kind of so the fandom for this series is wild. Everything is canon, even though it may not be kind of timeline congruent, because anything could have happened, so therefore it did happen, so therefore it's all canon, even though it's not canon.
Okay.
Um, as silly and as stupid as that is, including the Hello Kitty crossover. Go ahead and Google that for later.
Okay. I will Google
There's a
that one
Hello
for
Kitty
later.
Steins Gate bit. Yeah. Um, yeah, but that's that's kind of the fun part of it. There is Steins Gate Zero, which aired like 2018, I believe,
Okay.
and that one does fill in the gap, or it's meant to be placed into 20, like between episodes 22 and 23.
Hmm.
There was a episode divided by zero, which is a 23 beta. Uh, so it kind of, I think it's supposed to be like 23 beta, then followed by zero, then followed by an OVA or two of zero.
Okay.
Uh, the movie theoretically could be at the end of it all. But the movie, so
Yeah.
I
So
would say just
what is the watch order for that? Like, where I was wondering where the movie comes in. Um,
I the way I'm saying is watch it the way it was really like actually released,
so the movie was
because
released
the
after.
most was after the OVA, the first OVA, episode
Okay.
25. So
And then
I would
23
say watch,
beta comes out along with zero.
and then later on zero,
Okay. Okay.
and all that stuff.
Okay.
So even though it's like, because the series is meant to be paced out in a certain way, right? So if you decided to watch it all the way in the series timeline, then you go ahead and all of a sudden you're having this momentum. Episode 22 ends. You got to stop World War III, and then you throw in zero in there, the entirety of it. Then you kind of kill the flow of how quick episode 23 and 24 happened, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, I think it was originally aired this way, and that's why I had you watch it this way.
Yeah.
Um, and I think afterwards, if we ever get around to it, we can get around to zero. But for now, I think the next step would be, since we didn't get it, you didn't get enough time to watch the OVA 25, uh, egoistic panorama, paranoid. I forget what it is
I think
now,
it's
but it was
Panorama. Yeah.
is it Panorama? Okay. But yeah, watch that one, followed by the movie.
Sweet.
And then if we can hopefully talk about that.
Yeah, that
Um,
will be what we are going to do next is egoistic Poriomania. We were both wrong.
oh, my bad. Yep.
That is a very strange word. I don't even know what that word means, if it's a real word. But egoistic Poriomania. So we will do that along with the movie, probably at the same time next that we do one of these. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah.
So all said and done, what is your thoughts, feelings about the series as a whole? You know,
Very good, very good. I wish more anime would try to do stuff like this. I think I give it about an 8. I give it about an 8 out of 10. I think that I'm of two minds on the first 11 episodes. On the one hand, I think that I feel like it would have been good to put a little bit more pizzazz in there, and or move that mic drop of episode 12 to somewhere maybe episode 9 or 10, and have a little bit more on the back end to kind of fill things in. But on the other hand, like I think that episodes 1 through 11, their job is really to make you feel like you know where this is going, like you really know what's going to happen, and you're in it for the slice of life of a time travel, anime. You're just in it for that, and you're in it for the characters and development and stuff like that, which you are, or you still can be after episode 12. So I think that the way that they did it probably works the best. Um, I do think that while episodes 1 through 11, it's not that they're really bad, but just compared to the end of it and the chances of somebody being like, I don't know where this is going, I'm going to dip after episode 3, 5, 8, 9, 10, dipping after, any of those episodes would kind of make sense if you're not just totally into it. So yeah, it's a testament to how good the show is for how popular it is, because it's had to be purely by word of mouth, and people are like, no, you have to, no, trust me, like, I'm an anime nerd and I stuck with it because I'm an anime nerd, but I'm telling you, you have to stick with this show through 12 or through just keep sticking with it, and it I'm telling you, it pans out, it plays it, and it pays off, um, and that people will go, okay, they stick with it and they are justly rewarded. That's it says a lot about how good the show is, at least all the way through, but especially in the back half there.
Yeah. Also, I want you to realize we're also talking about a series that is now just past its 15-year mark.
Yeah.
It started airing in April of 2011. So like now, had you seen it 15 years earlier, I think also maybe your impressions would be that much greater. It's a time between all the other anime that has come out, just media in general. Um, I think that it's earned its right, and to be on your scale at an 8 this far out, still kind of proves how well it stood the test of time. Um,
Pun intended.
yeah. Um,
Couldn't help it.
Unintentionally intended. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the thing is it's like this is it's one of those things that this series is really good. It's still highly like lauded as being one of the better animes out there. So if you have something like, oh yeah, you're a sci-fi fan, you're a time travel fan, then at least is pretty much guaranteed for you. Um, and yeah, like I said, this is part of that the science adventure series, and the first one being Chaos Head, and Chaos Head was like an augmented reality kind of story arc. Robotic Note was followed after Steins Gate,
Hmm.
so that one was also had its own little unique quirks. There's one called Occult 9, which I remember watching, but honestly, it didn't stick with me as much. It was just
Okay.
Robotic Note was pretty hit. I was also like kind of was like okay until it hit hard. You're like, oh wow. Um, Chaos Head was just strange all the way through. So it's just like, which wasn't a bad thing necessarily. I think Steins Gate's probably the best property of all though, but they all had their charm. All the first three had their charm for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's it for me on this front. I guess the main question I think people want to know for you is who is your waifu?
Um. Well, all of them appropriately aged up to whatever the age of consent is. Um. I'm presuming that's what you mean.
Sure.
Uh. I'm cutting all of this. I don't know.
I mean, I wasn't expecting you to go for Nai, but I mean, if that's what you're talking,
Oh
if that's what
God.
you're,
Oh
it's
no. Oh no. No, I hadn't really considered Nye. That would be weird. But the fact that you did
all the
says a
CRTs
lot
you could
about
ever
you.
want.
Says a lot about you. Just saying.
You're the one
Um,
saying aged up, okay? So
I don't know. I think that it's got to be between Karisu and Mayuri, but I feel like I don't know. Um, what's her name? Hayase, is that her name? She's not bad, but not not really. There's not really. I'm not really feeling it as much. Probably. I don't know. It's too hard to pick. Definitely not Rumiho, Akiha, or Ferris. Definitely not her. Sorry, Rukuko, you gotta go. Um, yeah, Suzuha, sorry. Moeka's just kind of crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Who's your waifu?
you didn't even answer my question.
I,
You're saying all the
I'll
ones. Okay, so you're going
I've
with Daru? Is that it? Daru's
I
your OG, your
Don's my
OG?
boy. um, I will reveal mine if you will reveal yours.
Probably. Let's see. I'd probably go with Suzuha.
Okay.
Suzuha or Ruka as Ruka. It was also like it's funny because you're like main. It's like no, you know what? Like that's the whole thing. The first time you see Ruka, like no, this is gonna be like the moment you find out about
I
time
do.
travel. Like yeah, all right. This is where the visual novel like you could tell this is the added path they did specifically for that. Like they're gonna mess with you on this one. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
Suzu.
so
Go ahead.
Ferris was a fair play. Ferris is pretty awesome. Molika's crazy as get out, so no thank you. Um, I thought that the play for Mayuri is like she they play her as girl next door, but like also distantly removed. I'm like, she's just not all there. Uh Kurisu's just too she's too smart and she'll just make me feel inferior the entire time. No, and I'm not into that. I am not into so yeah, there you
Okay.
go. So like I said, Suzuha was the most like fun and energetic character. And then until she was a murderous badass, and you're like, oh wow, that's pretty awesome. You know, but also probably the one laden with trauma. But like, oh well, you know, if that crazy's on your side, I guess it's okay. It's not directed at you. That's Moeka. All the crazy directed at you.
Suzuha, yeah, Suzuha is kind of weirdly the most down to earth. Um, I was gonna say Mayuri probably, but
You are
yeah,
a My Hero fan. It's fine though. I accept you for what you are. Uh
I mean Suzuha. The thing about Suzuha, she's most down to earth, but she's also kind of like, I mean, time travel, but like, what else? What else you got going for you? Not a whole lot. I mean, at least Mayuri like gets, like she's like a team player. She's like discovering stuff.
you're just really into cosplay, and I get it. I get it.
I'm into girls who are into cosplay. How about that? Yeah, I'm into anime girls who are into cosplay, which is a really weird kind of thing. But
Super
yeah,
niche group, but we get you.
this is Daru. Like Daru does the heavy lifting of making this anime not a harem anime. I mean, it is like he is like the tiny linchpin, just keeping it from being a full on harem anime. And his character could have been, female. They could have
That's for
done
the
that.
that's for the that's the other that's for the other world line.
Yeah, I'm putting all this. By the way, I'm putting all this behind the Patreon wall. Or they're like the episode ended like 10 minutes ago. We're not allowing this out there just for people to have without pay.
I need to just clip out just you and a couple of things that you've done, and then just try to go viral with it, and then that's how we'll sell the show. Yeah.
God, well, we better make enough to offset my job loss.
Yeah. Or we just it's like, hey, it's meant to be. We gotta have you lose your job in order for you to find your true calling.
No,
That's what
no,
Steins gets taught. That's anything it's taught you. You got to go through the bad parts before you get to the good parts.
no.
All right. Uh on that note, guys, if you made it this far, we appreciate it on this special anime Steins Gate edition of Another Dead Pixel. Well, until next time, El Sai Kangru.
I'll take it easy. Bye.